When Han Fei appeared outside the mist of death aura where the immortal temple was, a teleportation array condensed from death energy appeared in front of him. Without hesitation, Han Fei pulled Shiman Linglan up onto the teleportation array. If the death god wanted to attack him, no one could resist him in the current situation of the sea realm. When the mist of death aura in front of the two of them dissipated, they appeared in the sky above an azure inferno. Below was the infinite hell, and above was a void palace completely made of death aura, similar to the composition of the time temple. In the palace, there were 11 divine pillars, 5 on each side, and the thickest one at the front. Each pillar was completely made of death energy. At this moment, the 10 Yama kings walked out of the pillars of death energy. Everyone was wearing black hoods, and their faces under the black robes couldn't be seen clearly, but there were different marks on the black robes, which should represent their identities. At the front, the death god didn't appear in the form of a white-clothed young man like last time. Instead, like the 10 kings of hell, he appeared in a black robe. Under him, a big chair made of death energy appeared. Han Fei estimated that this show was probably for Shiman Linglan to see. Although the 3 temples were on the same side, it didn't mean that there was no competition between them. Greetings, death god. Under the black robe, the low voice of the death god sounded. I heard that you went to the chaotic era. Why are you still a great monarch? Han Fei was speechless. I don't want to. But how can the supreme technique be as simple as you think? Han Fei said, soon I won't just be a great monarch. Then, the death god seemed to turn his head to look at Shiman Linglan. Time is really lucky. With your Dao, you can enter all 3 temples. Shiman Linglan bowed slightly. Thank you for your compliment, Master Death God. The death god waved his hand slightly, straightened his posture, and looked at Han Fei. Tell me, why are you looking for me? Han Fei said bluntly, I want to destroy the eternal race. Han Fei could feel that when he said this, all the 10 Yama kings were looking at him. He knew that if it were someone else, they might not understand. They would only feel that why would they risk everything to start a war with the eternal race at this moment? However, these people in front of him were not ordinary people. Since Han Fei had returned, he naturally knew what happened on the first battlefield. Under such circumstances, he still insisted on destroying the eternal race, which meant that there must be a special meaning to destroying the eternal race. This would even directly affect the situation on the first battlefield. The death god was not surprised. Instead, he said, you should know that it's not convenient for me to do anything now. Han Fei turned his head and glanced at the 10 Yama kings. What about them? They can. Han Fei didn't know how strong Death God was. Perhaps he wasn't as strong as eldest senior brother, but he was still a master of the 3 temples. He could be said to be one of the 3 strongest people now. With him guarding the sea realm alone, unless there was a third ominous above the dominator level, he couldn't imagine who could attack the sea realm under the watch of the death god. The death god suddenly changed the topic. However, do you know how many gods? God-slaying level, sea-quelling gods, and dominators there are in the eternal race? Han Fei said calmly, those below the sea-quelling god level don't matter. But do they have 20 sea-quelling gods? Do you think the sea-quelling god is as common as fish in the sea? The death god chuckled, but after the 2 laughs, his voice regained its dignity. More or less. There may be a few more, but no more than 30. Han Fei couldn't help raising his eyebrows. He had already overestimated the eternal race, but this number was something he had never expected. However, Han Fei just raised his eyebrows and continued to ask, how about dominators? On the surface, they have 2 dominators, but in fact, they have 5. There are no hidden ones as far as I know. Huff. Hearing the death god's clear answer, Han Fei was slightly relieved instead. Han Fei couldn't help but smile. Senior death god, can you help me kill a dominator? Didn't I say that it was inconvenient for me to take action? Han Fei extended his hand, took out a fishing pole, and threw it into the time river. After about 3 seconds, the death god smiled. Okay. Han Fei cupped his fists. In that case, I'll take my leave. Another moment later. Old distanceless. The distanceless gate appeared again, and Han Fei said, Old distanceless. Send me to the path of no return. Buzz. Immediately, the distanceless gate trembled slightly, and 3 words appeared on it. Are you crazy? Shiman Linglan couldn't help but ask, if eldest senior brother and the real ominous are at war, how can you get there? Han Fei said, because I have eldest senior brother. I can at least stay for a few seconds, right? The distanceless gate, that place is a little beyond my teleportation range. Han Fei said, but from your tone just now, you obviously know that place. So, can you go there or not? The distanceless gate seemed to hesitate. After a few seconds, words appeared. Yes. As I expect. The distanceless gate was said to be able to reach anywhere in the entire chaotic sea in an instant. Generally speaking, any place full of chaos belonged to the chaotic sea. The current chaotic sea was actually divided because of the ominous existence. On the chaotic sea's side was the first battlefield, and behind the first battlefield was probably an area enveloped by the ominous. Therefore, it was not that the distanceless gate couldn't go there, but that he didn't want to. The distanceless gate, we're risking our lives to go to that place. Han Fei smiled frankly. I'll take the risk. What about you? Don't you particularly want to kill the ominous? Buzz. The distanceless gate opened, and a word appeared on it. Okay. Han Fei seemed to feel the determination of the distanceless gate and just chuckled. Then he looked at Shiman Linglan, who said, from the moment I stepped into the time river, I've been betting my life. Han Fei took Shiman Linglan's hand and smiled. Don't worry. This trip won't be dangerous. At the end of the Sea of Stars, there was a path of no return. The vast chaos around here had long collapsed, but all the collapse didn't happen on the path of no return. In the turbulent void where energy raged and space shattered, in an environment full of ominous aura, the distanceless gate forcibly opened a door. In the chaotic space. Swish. Han Fei's body was bathed in golden light, and the law of life was surging. His strength had been raised to the level of sea-quelling god. As for Shiman Linglan, her current combat power exceeded 20 million, which was much stronger than Han Fei's. Even so, as soon as the two of them appeared, cracks appeared on Shiman Linglan's body. In the depths of the void, there were continuous explosions. As for eldest senior brother undead, and the ominous original body, Han Fei and Shiman Linglan didn't see any of them. Han Fei roared, eldest senior brother. Before he finished speaking, in the collapsing void that spanned billions of kilometers, infinite ominous aura condensed into a palm mark and had already slapped down. At that moment, the distanceless gate trembled crazily. He really wanted to run, but he had already bet his life with Han Fei. If he ran, Han Fei would definitely be doomed, so he couldn't run. Even Shiman Linglan couldn't help but hold Han Fei's palm tightly. In the face of such divine might, it would be a lie to say that she wasn't afraid. If the power of this palm really slapped down, the two of them would be crushed in the blink of an eye. Bang! When the ominous hand was less than 1,000,000 kilometers away from Han Fei, a black divine coffin blocked the sky, and Senior Brother Undead's magnificent figure finally appeared. Senior Brother Undead also slapped out a huge palm, which collided with the ominous palm 1,000,000 kilometers away. In an instant, the space there was crushed, forming a kind of spatial dust. Han Fei's pupils were constricted slightly. If he was under such power, he would probably be disassembled by the spatial dust in an instant. Even his invincible body might not be able to withstand it for a second. Little junior brother, why are you here with Linglan? Suddenly, eldest senior brother's voice rang in Han Fei and Shiman Linglan's ears. The two of them quickly turned their heads, only to see eldest senior brother in green, with his hands behind his back, quietly looking at Senior Brother Undead, who was fighting the ominous. Although eldest Senior Brother still looked gentlemanly, Han Fei still saw that his clothes were a little wrinkled. Shiman Linglan hurriedly bowed. Greetings, eldest Senior Brother. Eldest Senior Brother nodded slightly and then turned to look at Han Fei. Han Fei didn't dare to waste any time. Eldest Senior Brother, I need to use the Creation Star Compass. Okay. As eldest Senior Brother raised his hand, the Creation Star Compass appeared in his palm. The Creation Star Compass seemed to resist and vibrated slightly. But eldest Senior Brother just flicked his finger at it, and the Creation Star Compass immediately fell silent and flew obediently to Han Fei. Eldest Senior Brother said, the cracks on the Creation Star Compass have been repaired, but there's not enough time. If it suffers a particularly powerful force, it may crack. Han Fei took the Creation Star Compass and cupped his hands. Got it. Eldest Senior Brother, wait for me. With that, Han Fei didn't dare to stay any longer, because while eldest Senior Brother was talking to him, one of Senior Brother Undead's dark arms was blown away. Perhaps it was nothing to Senior Brother Undead, but clearly, Senior Brother Undead was no match for that ominous. It wouldn't be right for him to stay here. With that, Han Fei and Shiman Linglan turned around and entered the distanceless gate. Han Fei had just taken half a step in when the distanceless gate disappeared with a swish. What Han Fei didn't see was that eldest Senior Brother's lips curled slightly. In this world, a voice roared like a gale. Void, this brat is the owner of the demon purification pot, right? What a pity. His realm is so low. Eldest Senior Brother said indifferently, since you think his realm is too low, why did you attack him? How dare an ant set foot here? He should be executed. Don't you know that even ants can shake the sky? Eldest Senior Brother raised his hand and pointed his finger. In the blink of an eye, this broken star river returned to a calm and stable space from that one full of chaotic spatial dust just now, as if the broken space just now was not here at all. 100 years later. In the Soul Sea, on the Bloodline Divine Tree. For countless years, the eternal race had lived beside the Bloodline Divine Tree. The main reason was that before the reappearance of the path of Reincarnation, the birth of all creatures needed to give birth to bloodlines. Through the bloodline divine tree. In the long history of the eternal race, they had long developed a way to trace and steal bloodlines. They had a way to steal and find some extraordinary bloodlines. This was also one of the ways for some top powerhouses of the eternal race to nurture their bodies. Furthermore, the bloodline divine tree itself could give birth to some fruits. The essence of these fruits was bloodlines. Originally, after the end of the primordial era, everyone tried to use these bloodlines to rebuild the strong. But after the eternal race defected, these bloodlines completely became their exclusive benefits. Although the path of reincarnation had reappeared and the strong masters of the myriad races had entered the cycle of reincarnation, the eternal race hadn't given up on the bloodline divine tree. Instead, they used this period of time to nurture some bodies with the power of the bloodline divine tree. At this moment, on the bloodline divine tree, a god-slaying level powerhouse of the eternal race was standing in front of a body that had been nurtured for a long time, testing it with divine power. Buzz. He invaded this body with the power of a finger. However, as soon as his power entered this body, he found that it was absorbed by this body. Huh. The eternal race powerhouse was stunned for a moment before he looked delighted. Could it be that this body had already been nurtured? However, it wasn't the time yet, right? But in any case, the power of this body seemed to have reached the point of carrying the power of the sea-quelling god. It was a good thing after all. This person immediately wanted to turn around and leave to report this matter. Are you in a hurry to leave? Suddenly, a voice sounded behind this person, scaring him. He wanted to turn back, but in the next moment, he found that he couldn't move at all. When he looked again, an invisible hand had strangled him at some point. At this moment, a figure had already walked in front of him. As the figure turned around, this person was shocked. It turned out to be a soul body, identical to him. Whether it was his soul, aura, great Tao, or law, they were exactly the same. Who are you? This person was shocked. To be able to transform into his appearance and suppress him so easily, this person was at least a sea-quelling god. But how could a sea-quelling god be a soul body? I'm the person who wants your life. Arrogant. This is the territory of the eternal race. If you kill me here, even if you are a sea-quelling god-level powerhouse, it's impossible for you to walk out alive. Besides, I'm afraid you're crazy to appear here so openly. As this person spoke, he secretly said something via voice transmission. Because there was a sea-quelling god-level powerhouse guarding the bloodline divine tree. Don't waste your effort. The person opposite him raised his hand, and a small seal appeared in his palm. The eternal race powerhouse was shocked. Concealing divine seal? This person was naturally Han Fei. He said, after hanging here for 100 years, I can finally take action. I'll start with you, a god-slaying level powerhouse. Bang! The concealing divine seal could seal all perception in a specific area, so Han Fei dared to be so unscrupulous. As Han Fei squeezed his hand, the god-slaying level powerhouse of the eternal race exploded on the spot. However, Han Fei didn't kill him immediately. Instead, he cut off 99% of his river of life, leaving only a trickle that barely connected. In fact, Han Fei could also use the creation divine prison, but he was afraid that the eternal race would commit too many crimes. Once he used the creation divine prison, it would directly sentence them to death. In that case, once The life tablet was broken, it would inevitably arouse the attention of the eternal race. As for now, Han Fei chose to take action because while he was hanging here, pretending to be a body, he had already set up all the traps he needed to set up. Now, he had no scruples. The range of the concealing divine seal was gradually expanding. However, others couldn't sense the spread of this range. Even Dominator level powerhouses couldn't sense it. This was because the concealing divine seals concealing ability couldn't be considered a complete sealing barrier. As long as you wanted to leave, you could easily walk out without encountering any obstacles. Back then, Jiang Bai used this to ban all connections between the world and the world where the divine descendants were and the outside world. While Han Fei was hanging on the bloodline divine tree, his perception saw everything on the bloodline divine tree. Although the bloodline divine tree was the sacred tree of the eternal race, they didn't live on the bloodline divine tree but lived around it. However, some people would come to investigate the nourished body on it from time to time and provide some resources to continue to nourish the body. Therefore, there weren't many strong masters on the bloodline divine tree. Usually, there was only a sea-quelling god routinely guarding it, and the rest were all gods and god-slaying level powerhouses. Among them, the god-slaying level powerhouses mainly came to check on the nurturing of the body and nourish the body. The gods came because there was a blood-nurturing place in the bloodline divine tree, where countless bloodlines accumulated in the past gathered. If they took a fancy to some heavenly talents among the creatures of the myriad races, they would choose some relatively powerful bloodlines and secretly inject them into the bodies of those strong masters, waiting to harvest them in the future. Today was the routine inspection of the body. Because there were 17 bodies, as many as 17 god-slaying level powerhouses came here. 20 or 30 god-level powerhouses came every day. At this moment, 23 people were on the bloodline divine tree. Plus a sea-quelling god, these were all the powerhouses on the bloodline divine tree today. As for those below the god level, since the reappearance of the path of reincarnation, they were not allowed to go to the bloodline divine tree. It was a pity. However, this was the eternal race's camp after all, so the barrier was set up very casually. But even so, Han Fei wouldn't rush in. He bowed outside the barrier. Master Yutsong, I have something to report. Buzz. Han Fei successfully walked in. Yutsong was a middle-aged man with a square face. He didn't stop cultivating because of this. A soul voice echoed in Han Fei's ear, "You're not my person, are you? Why are you reporting to me?" "Because it's convenient." Yutsong was only briefly stunned and didn't doubt Han Fei at first, but in the next moment, a pearl appeared in front of him. It was his soul-suppressing spiritual treasure. Before he could react, he felt his mind shake as if his soul was disturbed by some power. In the next moment, he sensed that something was wrong and immediately dispersed this will that was trying to shake his soul. But the moment he came back to his senses, a chain had already clasped his body. Law enforcement divine chain, are you Han Fei? Yutsong's reaction was already extremely fast. As a sea-quelling god, his speed of breaking through Han Fei's void-stealing technique was already extremely fast. After all, the void-stealing technique was not a sea-quelling god-level technique. Although it could have an effect on the sea-quelling god. Because of Han Fei's strength, the effect was not much. However, although the effect was not great, if it were an ordinary sea quelling god, this moment of distraction couldn't cause much damage to a powerhouse of the same level. However, Han Fei had the creation divine prison. Locked by the law enforcement divine chain, even the sea quelling god couldn't break free. In the next moment, the creation divine prison floated above Yu Song's head and began to convict him. At this moment, Han Fei's soul body-like body began to change, and in the blink of an eye, he turned into Yu Song. He said indifferently, "You got it right. Unfortunately, there is no reward." Yu Song roared, "Han Fei, I know why you're here. You just want the demon purification pot's divine vine. The demon purification pot doesn't mean much to our eternal race. I can give it to you. Do you think I'm an idiot, or do you overestimate yourself?" Seeing this, Yu Song said, "Han Fei, how dare you? Even if the concealing divine seal is in your hands, how can the current sea realm be a match for our eternal race? You're causing trouble for the sea realm." Kakik. Han Fei smiled gloomily. "Don't worry. You're just the first. Soon, I'll send you to the path of reincarnation, together with your clansmen." At this moment, the creation divine prison had already convicted Yu Song. The sea quelling god, Yu Song, betrayed the myriad races, schemed to snatch the bloodline of the myriad races, killed his compatriots, stole the fruits of others' divine tribulations, and escaped from fighting the ominous. He should be sentenced to death. However, Han Fei wasn't worried. The death penalty was actually not so easy to execute. Han Fei admitted that the creation divine prison was very strong, but the creation divine prison was only a supreme nature treasure after all. And Yu Song was a sea quelling god. At this level of strength, he could actually contend with the creation divine prison. Sure enough, the law enforcement divine chain immediately produced hellfire. At the same time, a destructive power was born, but Yu Song wasn't obliterated immediately. In the next moment, Yu Song was sucked into the creation divine prison. Han Fei thought for a moment and entered the creation divine prison too. The third level of the creation divine prison had the power of destruction and infinite laws. After Yu Song came in, these powers surrounded him. Han Fei could see that Yu Song's flesh, bones, and soul were all burning. At the same time, billions of Tao patterns appeared and were absorbing the power of laws from his body. Obviously, they wanted to weaken Yu Song first before killing him. Roar roar. Han Fei, you can't escape. This is the eternal race. Once I die, you won't be able to escape. Han Fei laughed. Really? Unfortunately, I don't care. With that, Han Fei ignored Yu Song and his voice echoed here. Senior on the fourth floor, although you didn't respond to me, I will kill a dominator today and let you out. Now, the sea realm is on the verge of destruction. You can just sit by and watch, but if the entire sea of stars is destroyed, even if you can survive in the creation divine prison, it's meaningless. That's all I have to say. Senior, the choice is yours. Over the years, Han Fei had talked to this person several times, but no one responded to him. However, Han Fei knew that there must be someone on the fourth floor. Since Qiu Wanren and Old Fierce had confirmed the existence of this person, he was probably still alive. Even if the creation divine prison really wanted to obliterate this person, it might not be able to do it, because the creation divine prison might not have the power to obliterate the dominator at all. Returning to the bloodline divine tree, Hanfei smiled. At this moment, he had completely transformed into Yutsong. In the next moment, he appeared in front of a god-slaying level powerhouse. Seeing Yutsong, the man immediately bowed. Greetings, Master Yutsong. Hanfei was too lazy to talk to this person. He directly stole the other party's consciousness with the void-stealing technique and crushed him in the next moment, leaving only some remnant souls and a trace of the river of life. Although Hanfei was a sea-quelling god, it was a little unrealistic to kill 16 god-slaying level powerhouses with a stomp of his foot. If he fought them in a sealed barrier, although as a sea-quelling god, he could definitely kill 16 god-slaying level powerhouses, it would take some time. At least, it would take hundreds of seconds. After all, the god-slaying level powerhouses definitely had treasures on them. Therefore, it was a better choice to defeat them one by one. Even if someone discovered that something was wrong with the bloodline divine tree halfway, Hanfei didn't care, because this war had already begun the moment he took action. After only 100 seconds, the remaining 16 god-slaying level powerhouses were all harvested in the same way. At this point, Hanfei finally showed his power as a sea-quelling god. While communicating with the river of life, he took out the blood skyblade and slashed out the immortal slaying knife. With one slash, the 23 gods on the sea quelling divine tree were all killed without even having the time to react. After doing all this, Hanfei didn't take back the blood skyblade. As he issued an order in his heart, the bodies nourished by the bloodline divine tree were cut off like fruits. These soulless bodies were not weak. At the very least, their physiques were comparable to the god-slaying level. The strongest one was already close to the sea-quelling god level. If he continued to grow, the eternal race would have one more sea-quelling god. However, nourishing the body was too troublesome. The eternal race had the bloodline divine tree and a long time to nurture it. He didn't have the time to do that. Therefore, he would give these bodies to the Time Temple. If they could resolve the danger on the first battlefield this time, with the ability of the Master of Time, he might really be able to create 17 sea-quelling gods. At this moment, everyone in the bloodline divine tree had been cleared. Hanfei gathered all the bloodlines in the bloodline nurturing ground and sat alone on the branch of the bloodline divine tree, beginning to search the souls of the god-slaying level powerhouses he had killed. After a while, Hanfei rubbed his eyebrows. There were really many sea-quelling gods in the eternal race. In the battle of the divine descendants, Old Han and his mother killed 2 of them. This time, he had killed 1. However, from the results of the soul search, the other party still had 24 sea-quelling gods. As for the information of the rulers, he had only discovered 2. In other words, there were only 2 rulers who would appear under normal circumstances. But the death god said they had 5 dominators. That must have included all the hidden dominators of the eternal race. As for the god-slaying level powerhouses, there were many of them. From the information these 17 people had, there were more than 300 god-slaying level cultivators, and there were as many as 50,000 gods. To be honest, he was shocked by the number of gods of the eternal race. How many King divine tribulation fruits had they stolen? Very few of these 50,000 gods were contributed by the Age of Doom and the Age of the Sea. Most of them had reached this level since the Age of Gods. If it weren't for the fact that the Sea Realm had experienced the Age of Doom, this number would Probably be even more. Fortunately, the eternal race's path to becoming a god mainly relied on stealing the fruits of others. Therefore, their combat power was relatively mediocre. Few gods were too strong, so there were relatively few who broke through the shackles of the divine persona and became god slayers, and there were even fewer who could break through the sea-quelling god level. The number of soulless bodies that the bloodline divine tree could nourish was limited. Only the particularly powerful divine persona fruits were qualified to be distributed, and they still needed to experience a long period of nourishment. Fortunately, the eternal race didn't know the law of time, and the time temple didn't go astray. Otherwise, such an eternal race was almost invincible. However, the only thing that made Han Fei feel lucky was that the soulless bodies nourished by the bloodline divine tree were not as powerful as the strong masters of the myriad races who had fought their way up. Therefore, the sea-quelling gods formed in this way were only intermediate-level sea-quelling gods. Their combat power should be about the same as after he fully unleashed his strength. Even if there were more, there wouldn't be much. As for the eternal race members below the god level, their population was not huge, only less than 100 billion. The reason why there were only so few people after reproducing for countless years was that it was very difficult for them to give birth. Although their unique life forms would still give birth to the next generation, the nurturing process was very long. They had to first form a soul embryo and wait for the soul embryo to have consciousness before an eternal race member was born. And the process of having consciousness was relatively long. Therefore, a population of 100 billion was already a peak number in the history of the eternal race. Also, because the eternal race had no competition, they were like spiritual fruits between the heavens and earth, absorbing the souls of the soul sea to grow up. They wouldn't be like the myriad races who had begun to gain experience, fight since they were young. At most, the eternal race would have some simple sparring with their own people. That was why the eternal race had been inviting or tempting creatures of all races to join the eternal race. This avoided the pain of nurturing soul embryos. At the same time, Han Fei learned some secrets, which was that the eternal race had planted many people among the myriad races. However, these god-slaying level powerhouses only knew about 1 or 2 god-level spies at most. However, Han Fei didn't care. Once the base camp of the eternal race was destroyed, even if there were still eternal race in this world, with that few people, they wouldn't be able to cause much trouble. It would be equivalent to extinction. At this point, Han Fei finally had a comprehensive understanding of the eternal race. If the high-end combat power of the eternal race was excluded, then this race was trash. He finally knew why the strong masters of the 10,000 races let the eternal race guard the bloodline divine tree. One was because it was safe in the soul sea, and the other was because it was too difficult for the eternal race to grow. Even if they grew a little stronger, the strong masters of the myriad races felt that they could sweep them. However, these strong masters of the myriad races never expected that the path of reincarnation would disappear, and the bloodline divine tree became the only condition for the birth of the creatures of the myriad races. At this time, the eternal race betrayed them and threatened them with the bloodline divine tree, so the strong masters of the myriad races had to be careful. Just 1,000 people clan. Han Fei smacked his lips, and his eyes gradually turned cold. All of you must die. After understanding the eternal race, Han Fei didn't change his mind about destroying them because of their strength. Instead, he wanted to start a war. Even more. At this point, it had been less than half an hour since the concealing divine seal sealed this place. However, it was impossible for the concealing divine seal to hide here for long. Now, the eternal race didn't realize the danger. Once a Dominator-level powerhouse or a sea-quelling God-level powerhouse tried to communicate with the people on the bloodline divine tree, they would immediately discover the problem. Therefore, it was only a matter of time before he was discovered. In that case, Han Fei thought for a moment and turned back into the God-slaying level eternal race just now. Yu Tsung was right. This person was not his subordinate. If he entered the eternal race as Yu Tsung, he definitely couldn't hide it from some people. Because Yu Tsung had no reason to leave the bloodline divine tree at this time. This person's name was Lu Qing, and he was a strong master under the command of a sea-quelling god named Mu. Han Fei left the bloodline divine tree openly and quickly came to a reef cave outside the bloodline divine tree. Outside the cave, Han Fei bowed respectfully. Master Mu Mu, I have something to ask of you. After all, it was the base camp of the eternal race. Mu Mu wouldn't have thought that his subordinate, a mere god-slaying level powerhouse, would dare to kill him. Therefore, when the cave opened, Han Fei walked in without meeting any resistance. In the cave, Mu Mu was surrounded by 3 god-slaying level soul bodies, all of which were female cultivators. At this moment, the 4 of them were connected by a soul chain, and something exciting and indescribable was happening to their souls. Because it was a soul intercourse, the eternal race wasn't afraid of being seen. Mu Mu even sat upright and looked at Han Fei with a smile. Lu Qing. Didn't you go to provide nourishment for my body? The 3-year nourishment period hasn't expired. Why are you back? Han Fei looked at him indifferently and said, I'm here to send you to hell. Yes, the moment Han Fei came here to enter this cave, the cover effect of the concealing divine seal enveloped this place and gave up on the bloodline divine tree. Although the concealing divine seal could completely envelop both the bloodline divine tree and this place, in this way, if a battle happened here, someone would immediately notice it. Before Mu Mu could react, Han Fei had already activated the void stealing technique. Although Mu Mu was protected by a soul-suppressing spiritual treasure, he still became temporarily absent-minded. At that moment, the law enforcement divine chain had already been activated. This sudden change shocked the 3 female cultivators who were having sex with Mu Mu. After all, they were at the god-slaying level. Their reaction was extremely fast. They knew that if they wanted to survive, they couldn't rely on themselves, but on Mu Mu, so they immediately tried to break the law enforcement divine chain. Time splitting. Almost at the same time, 3 Han Fei appeared here. Each of them slashed out an immortal slaying knife and cut off the long river of life here. These 3 god-slaying level powerhouses had no time to touch the law enforcement divine chain before they were directly cut apart, their souls shattered, and the long river of life was cut off. As for Han Fei, he stood where he was with a faint smile on his face, watching Mu Mu, who had just recovered his consciousness and was wrapped by the law enforcement divine chain. Law enforcement divine chain, you are Han Fei. How dare you step into our eternal race? Han Fei looked at him with a smile. 23 left. Before Mu Mu realized what Han Fei meant, he roared, Master. Whether your master comes or not, you're doomed. The creation divine prison hovered, convicting him. Han Fei had already walked out of this cave and murmured, "Has no one discovered it yet? The eternal race has probably forgotten the cruelty of the world and no longer has any vigilance." Fine, in that case, let me remind you. The law of life around Han Fei activated, and the river of life of the person he killed instantly collapsed. Rumble. Rumble. Clang. 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 Suddenly, the heavenly Tao cracks crisscrossed, and the death knells wailed continuously. A rain of blood fell to the soul sea, and the entire eternal race was stunned. The death knells were like dense drum beats, directly waking up the entire eternal race. Something happened to the bloodline divine tree. Not good. My soulless body is gone. What's wrong? What happened? Finally, a strong master shouted angrily, "How dare you break into our eternal race and kill our clansmen? You're courting death." At the same time, they didn't need to take the initiative to find it. From the place where Mumu was cultivating, the terrifying power of the sea quelling god suddenly erupted and swept out. Almost at the same time, 23 sea quelling gods and 2 dominator level powerhouses surrounded Mumu's cultivation place. However, the aftershock still crushed the hundreds of millions of ordinary Eternals in Mumu's territory. These people instantly evaporated before they knew anything. If it weren't for the timely arrival of the sea quelling gods and the dominators, less than 10% of the billions of eternal race members under Mumu's command would have survived this power. Of course, there were no ifs. Just as the 2 dominators were about to attack, their perception was blocked again. In the next moment, everyone saw Han Fei sitting on a throne, 1 foot on the chair, holding juice in one hand and fishing pole in the other. In front of him floated a total of 20 god-slaying level, soul-purifying pearls, and 23 god-level soul-purifying pearls. Each of these soul-purifying pearls was the last crystal of an eternal race powerhouse. Its effects were extraordinary. Han Fei raised his head, looked at the 2 dominators, and smiled faintly. "Nice to meet you. This is just a small gift for you." "Han Fei, how dare you slaughter in our eternal race? Even the void can't save you today." The one who spoke was Heavenly Soul Dominator, who had met Han Fei once and was also a leader of the eternal race. This person wanted to peep at the path of reincarnation with 2 drops of blood. On the dragon battlefield, this person almost ruined it. "Han Fei, hand over the soulless body and the bloodlines you stole. Leave the demon purification pot. I may spare your life." "Idiot." Han Fei sneered. "I'm afraid you yourself don't even believe the crap, but you still said them out loud. Are you insulting my intelligence? I definitely don't have anything for you, and let me tell you clearly, this is just a clone of mine. How dare you?" This dominator almost attacked, but he was blocked by Heavenly Soul Dominator. Heavenly Soul Dominator said, "Since it's a clone, why are you here to show off your battle results?" Slurp. Ah. Han Fei took a sip of juice and said lazily, "Show off? I just killed 2 sea quelling gods, 20 god slaying level, and 23 gods. What's there to show off? If I really want to show off, I have to kill a dominator. Don't you think so?" Heavenly Soul Dominator snorted. "If you don't have anything more to say, I'll destroy this clone of yours. Since you've killed your way into the eternal race unscrupulously, it's not too much for me to slaughter your human race. Right?" Han Fei smiled. "Of course, it's not too much at all, provided that you can Kill them. Heavenly Soul Dominator sneered. Do you think the Death God can protect humans? Han Fei sneered. If you have the ability, say that in front of him. Okay, I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. Firstly, this is a revenge for what you did in the Battle of the Divine Descendants, and secondly, I'm here to ask you for the demon purification pot's vine. If you return it, I'll leave immediately. Ha ha ha. Heavenly Soul Dominator laughed as if he had heard a great joke. Then, he looked at Han Fei coldly. I think you've lost your mind because of the trouble in the sea realm. You want the divine vine? What makes you think you can have it? In the current sea realm, there are almost no strong masters. What qualifications do you have to take it? Han Fei looked around and glanced at the furious sea-quelling gods surrounding him who couldn't wait to tear him apart. He smiled. I'll exchange the lives of hundreds of billions of people of your eternal race for it. Do you think it's enough? Heavenly Soul Dominator had run out of patience. He said coldly, if you continue to talk nonsense with me, don't blame me for killing you now. Han Fei's fishing pole trembled violently. He grinned. Look, the fish has taken the bait. Han Fei began to pull his fishing pole. It seemed to be quite laborious, but Heavenly Soul Dominator and the others didn't stop him. The eternal race also had their confidence. They knew that Han Fei could fish out some extraordinary things. However, they were also confident that they could suppress whatever Han Fei fished out today. They were even looking forward to Han Fei's trump card. A dense black mist was fished over from the Time River. Even if Heavenly Soul Dominator and the others could see through the Time River, they could only see the black fog, but they couldn't see what was in the black fog. Death energy? Their first reaction was that Han Fei had caught a piece of death energy, and what could be in the death energy? At most, it was the death god. But if the death god really appeared here today, they would be overjoyed. In the Soul Sea, they had infinite power. Not to mention the death god, even if the void came, they were confident that they could suppress it. However, the moment the black fog broke through the Time River, the expressions of Heavenly Soul Dominator and the other Dominator changed at the same time. The ominous? There was no difference between the ominous mist and the death energy. Therefore, they would only associate it with the immortal temple, but they never expected Han Fei to fish for the ominous. The eternal race had no contact with the ominous. If the ominous really entered the Soul Sea, God knew if the Soul Sea would change. At that moment, everyone felt that Han Fei had gone crazy. He was trying to use the ominous to destroy the eternal race. In the eternal race, there were even two strange caves that suddenly opened at this moment. There was no telling what kind of powerhouse was hidden inside. At that moment, this place was filled with an ominous aura. Heavenly Soul Dominator snorted coldly, and a soul tide immediately surged. Endless soul power burst out with a light of purification at the same time, instantly dispelling the ominous mist. However, to Heavenly Soul Dominator's surprise, it was just an ominous mist. Are you kidding me? Heavenly Soul Dominator had no patience to play with Han Fei anymore. He slapped down and crushed Han Fei. At the same time as Heavenly Soul Dominator attacked, in other places of the eternal race, in the area where ordinary people were, a terrifying power suddenly erupted. It was the full-strength attack of the sea-quelling god. With a thought, tens of millions of kilometers of Soul Sea collapsed and quickly spread out. After coming out of Mumu's cultivation cave, Hanfei only left a white mist. Body. The moment the effect of the concealing divine seal on the white mist body dissipated, Hanfei had already moved. This time, Hanfei's goal was to destroy the eternal race. Since it was destruction, it meant that he wouldn't let go of any member of the eternal race. Besides, he didn't want to let them go. He needed luck. Over the years, the eternal race had actually become the strongest race in the Sea of Stars. Furthermore, they had been harvesting other people's luck. Their luck was right at the peak now. Hanfei couldn't collect the luck of the 6 lineages, but don't forget that the 6 lineages could devour the luck of other races. Besides, in the face of this traitor of the myriad races, Hanfei didn't feel guilty at all. He even felt that the next generation of the eternal race might have been instilled with the deformed concept of stealing the fruits of the myriad races since they were young. In short, he had a clear conscience to wipe them out. At this moment, in addition to Heavenly Soul Dominator, another Dominator, and 2 strong masters coming out of the 2 caves immediately appeared in that area, trying to stop this power from spreading. However, just as the 3 Dominators were about to attack, they heard a cold voice. "All of you, die." Buzz. "Death God? You really dare to come?" "Humph, die." The 3 Dominators, plus the Heavenly Soul Dominator, who was a little slower, attacked at the same time. The 4 of them sealed the death ray at the same time. They didn't dare to let the death light burst out. This was the light of death. Anyone who was enveloped by this light would be deprived of their vitality, or cut off. Even a god might only be able to resist it for a few seconds. If the death god were to fight them head-on, they wouldn't be worried. But the death god was clearly going to attack ordinary eternal race members, which was very tricky. They had no time to attack the death god, so they could only seal the death ray. However, the death ray was indeed blocked by them, but Hanfei's sea-quelling god-level power had already erupted. Although there were also 23 sea-quelling gods in the eternal race, Hanfei had the upper hand after all. When they cut off Hanfei's power, billions of eternal race people had been completely annihilated. If it were someone else, they might not have been able to do this. But Hanfei had mastered the law of life. At that moment, he cut off the river of life here and unleashed his strongest power. As long as one died, he would never have a chance to revive. Seeing this scene, whether it was Heavenly Soul Dominator and the others, or the 23 sea-quelling gods, their eyes almost popped out in rage. "Hanfei, you're courting death. Everyone, kill him." At this moment, the Dominators of the eternal race knew why the other party was here. Hanfei was really here to attack the eternal race, and he came so directly. In their fury, their first thought was to kill Hanfei as well as the death god. The appearance of the death god was completely beyond their expectations. They didn't expect the death god to really dare to enter their territory. They didn't even understand why the death god dared. Not to mention whether he couldn't beat them, he actually dared to abandon the sea realm and attack the eternal race? These Dominators instinctively felt that something was wrong. Immediately, Heavenly Soul Dominator roared, "It's fake. This death god was fished out by Hanfei and won't exist for long. Let's join forces and kill him first." Huh? Hanfei's pupils were constricted. Something was wrong with Heavenly Soul Dominator. Although he had used void fishing in the miracle forest, he had only used it to catch the god-slaying arrow. Since then, it had only been used during the battle of the divine descendants. Besides, all the enemies at that time had been wiped out by the creation star compass. Therefore, Heavenly Soul Dominator shouldn't know that the time fishing technique could fish creatures, let alone a figure like the death god. Heavenly Soul Dominator couldn't possibly think that he could fish living creatures just because he had used it once in the miracle forest, right? The god-slaying arrow was actually more like a combat skill. It wouldn't show the real power of void fishing at all. Jiang Bai? Han Fei wasn't quite sure. In that battle, everyone died, including Jiang Bai's clone. Therefore, Jiang Bai's original body shouldn't know the secret of void fishing. However, Heavenly Soul Dominator knew it very clearly. He even knew that the Death God wouldn't exist for long unless Heavenly Soul Dominator was present during the battle of the divine descendants. Because of his Dominator-level strength, no one present discovered it. Then, before Senior Brother Undead and the others came, Heavenly Soul Dominator left. This could explain why Heavenly Soul Dominator knew the secret of void fishing. Yes, Han Fei was sure that this possibility was extremely high. This was because the primordial tower was very confident that no one could break its defense in the West Wilderness. A Dominator might be able to, but it might take time. And once a Dominator took action, the trump card of the Void Temple might be activated in advance, or even keep him forever. Therefore, even if Heavenly Soul Dominator was present, he had a reason not to take action. However, now was not the time to think about this. Whether or not the void fishing technique would be seen through, Han Fei's plan began the moment the Death God appeared. Suddenly, the soul power sea here disappeared, and above everyone's heads there was a long river of stars. Not good. We've been tricked. This is the creation star compass. Han Fei swallowed the eternal race with the creation star compass. The creation star compass formed an independent sea of stars. The soul sea might be mysterious, but it was immovable, so the creation star compass couldn't swallow it. But it didn't mean that he couldn't swallow the races in the soul sea. In fact, the creation star compass had swallowed everything in the part of the soul sea where the eternal race was. Except for the soul power sea itself, it had swallowed everything in it. This plan was just the beginning of Han Fei's 100-year plan. Both he and the Death God were bait. He killed those god-slaying level powerhouses and gods at the same time to cause a sensation in the eternal race and attract the strong masters of the eternal race. The Death God appeared firstly to protect Han Fei's original body, and secondly to attract the hidden dominators of the eternal race. In fact, after this step, Han Fei could already destroy the eternal race. At this moment, he just needed to take the creation star compass to the path of no return and throw it into the path of no return. However, Han Fei couldn't do that, because he hadn't found the demon purification pot's vine. Since it wasn't on the bloodline divine tree, it could only be in the hands of a certain dominator. If he really threw the creation star compass into the path of no return, the demon purification pot might never be able to be repaired, and the 10th fruit might never be used by him. And if he just took the creation star compass to the path of no return, once he released the eternal race, it would inevitably cause the worst outcome, which was that the eternal race would join forces with the ominous and attack eldest senior brother and senior brother undead. Eldest senior brother and senior brother undead were already struggling to resist the ominous. If he threw 5 more dominators over, once eldest senior brother and senior brother undead were defeated, he, Han Fei, would really become a sinner of the myriad races. Besides, in that environment, even if all the people of the eternal race died, they weren't killed by him. Then Han Fei wouldn't be able to obtain the slightest bit of luck of the eternal race, which completely deviated from his purpose of snatching the luck of the eternal race. Therefore, although he had moved the eternal race into the creation star compass, he could only fight this battle himself. At this moment, the entire eternal race panicked. The billions of members of the eternal race had lived in the Soul Sea from beginning to end. But now that the Soul Sea was gone and there was only land left, they had never experienced such an environment. In addition to the continuous heavenly Tao death knells and heavenly Tao cracks, it would be a lie to say that they were not afraid. At that moment, the 23 sea-quelling gods attacked Han Fei together. However, a death aura suddenly appeared here, and figures appeared from the death aura one after another. In the next moment, the 10 Yama kings, Shiman Linglan, the demon god, senior brother Azure Dragon, the current dragon god, the first palace master of the Time Temple, and 3 sea-quelling gods of the Time Temple all appeared. Among them, as soon as the 10 Yama kings appeared, they immediately stopped an eternal race dominator to share the pressure of the death god. As for the Time Palace Master, senior brother Azure Dragon, and Shiman Linglan, they protected Han Fei, blocking a round of attacks, and then attacked back. The 3 of them were the strongest existences except for the Dominator. The first Palace Master of the Time Temple was one of the 3 strongest subordinates of the Master of Time, so his strength was naturally extraordinary. They were not something the sea-quelling gods of the eternal race could compare to. As for senior brother Azure Dragon, when he broke through to the sea-quelling God realm, he could try to break through the barrier of the Dominator realm. By the way, it could be seen that his strength had reached the peak of the sea-quelling God realm and was only 1 step away from the Dominator realm. These 2 people couldn't be completely regarded as ordinary sea-quelling gods. Also, over the years, Shiman Linglan had been cultivating in seclusion, with the help of the treasure resources of the divine descendants, and her strength had grown rapidly. After all, Shiman Linglan's fundamental talent had been replenished. In terms of her current talent, it was comparable to the creatures born from the heavens and earth in the chaotic era. Coupled with the acceleration of time, it was not something ordinary sea-quelling gods could compare to. As soon as the 3 of them attacked, one of the 3 dominators who besieged the death god immediately stopped attacking the death god and fought them. The man shouted in a low voice, "I'm going to kill the dragon and the woman. Wait for me for a moment." The Dominator knew how powerful senior brother Azure Dragon and the other 2 were, and he also knew that these sea-quelling gods of the eternal race were probably no match for the 3 of them. However, he was confident that no matter how powerful the sea-quelling god was, it was only a sea-quelling god, and couldn't be a match for him. The first palace master of the Time Temple might not be easy to kill, but the other 2 shouldn't be difficult to kill. However, just as the Dominator's finger almost touched senior brother Azure Dragon, time changed here. He disappeared from the current timeline with the power of the finger. And this was one of the key points of the 100-year plan, the time dilemma. When Yuan Kong from the Time Temple taught Han Fei the 6 divine techniques of time and demonstrated the time-splitting technique, 1,000 great monarchs with identical strength appeared. He said that it would take more than a day to set up such a trap. In the time dilemma, there were many time techniques such as the time splitting technique, the time indestructible technique, the time cycle, and the time control technique. Back then, Yuan Kong was only a peak-level great monarch, but Han Fei had to use the power of the sea-quelling god to break that trap. Now, the Time Temple Master and Shiman Linglan had been preparing for 100 years. If they couldn't even trap a Dominator for a period of time, how could the Time Temple be worthy of being one of the 3 temples? Senior Brother Azure Dragon snorted coldly, not paying attention to the disappeared Dominator at all. However, no matter how powerful Senior Brother Azure Dragon was, he was not a Dominator after all. Although he could suppress these sea-quelling gods of the eternal race, it was unrealistic for him to kill a few of them instantly. Senior Brother Azure Dragon restrained 5 sea-quelling gods alone, which was already shockingly strong. The current dragon god, in his dragon form, only stopped 2 people. The 3 sea-quelling gods of the Time Temple also stopped 3 Eternals. It wasn't that they didn't want to stop more, but that the sea-quelling gods of the eternal race didn't want to fight them at all. Their goal was Han Fei. Killing Han Fei was their first priority. And the strong masters of the Time Temple who weren't good at fighting naturally couldn't stop a few each like others, even if they had the strength. As for the demon god, although he had just broken through to the sea-quelling god level, his foundation was too strong. He had the God-fiend body and the God-fiend dual form, so he stopped the 2 people. Only 6 people had stopped the 12 sea-quelling gods of the eternal race. This was already the best result. The other 11 sea-quelling gods were about to charge at Han Fei. However, there was a green light that was faster than them. Buzz! All of a sudden, a green light swept over, and the power of a Dominator directly destroyed Han Fei. However, Han Fei, who exploded, turned into a piece of law of time and dissipated on the spot. At this moment, the last Dominator of the eternal race finally appeared. Unfortunately, this sneak attack clearly didn't succeed. In the next moment, Han Fei said leisurely, "Jiang Bai, I learned from you that we have to reserve some strength in any case. Now that the death god is restrained, it's the best time to kill me. However, before all the masters of the eternal race come out, do you think I will appear with my original body?" The Dominator stood in front of the sea-quelling gods, who were about to charge up. "If you don't want to die, don't go." The death aura behind Han Fei didn't dissipate. Those sea-quelling gods might not think that Han Fei had any other trump cards, but this Dominator knew. In this battle, there were still 2 extremely important people who didn't appear, which were Han Guangqiu and Jiang Linxian. The Dominator's face changed and he turned into Jiang Bai. He looked at Han Fei quietly. "How did you guess it was me?" "As I expect." Han Fei was not surprised to see the Dominator-level Jiang Bai at all. He said, "At first, I thought that it was Heavenly Soul Dominator who secretly participated in the battle of the Divine Descendants and then quietly retreated. But even so, how did Heavenly Soul Dominator know about the Creation Star Compass?" Han Fei sneered and continued, "If he's really Heavenly Soul Dominator, he wouldn't have been able to escape the moment the Creation Star Compass appeared. Unless someone told him in advance, or the Dominator present back. Then wasn't him at all. Either way, it means that there is a person who has already known about the Creation Star Compass. Your chaotic divine race is really full of talents. You don't only have the traitor, Jiang Taichu, but also have a filial son like you." Ha ha ha. Jiang Bai couldn't help but laugh. "It seems that I underestimated you in the Past. You're a smart person. However, if it weren't for the fact that someone has been watching you, I would have killed you long ago. In addition, Jiang Bai is just a clone I buried in the chaotic divine race. From the beginning to the end, Jiang Bai is just a clone. The chaotic divine race is just a chess piece. Han Fei sneered. Really? It turns out that it has always been your eternal race causing trouble. You've been smart all your life. Why didn't you guess? What happened today? What happened today? Jiang Bai smiled. How long can the death god exist? Without the death god. Do you think you can kill a dominator just with the 10 Yama kings and the first palace master of the time temple? Or with Han Guangqiu and Jiang Linxian? 2 losers? With that, Jiang Bai suddenly stopped laughing and looked at Han Fei weirdly. Guess why I had Jiang Bai bring the concealing divine seal to you? Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly, and Jiang Bai continued, how do you know that the concealing divine seal wasn't given to you by me? My purpose is to let you sneak into the eternal race. Ha ha ha. I know you will definitely come. The only thing I didn't expect was the creation star compass. But it doesn't matter. This time, you, Han Guangqiu, Jiang Linxian, and the people you are with today will all die here in the end. Really? As he spoke, a divine seal suddenly pressed down in the sky. However, Jiang Bai seemed to have expected it. Not only did he retreat from the range of the primordial seal, but he also took the 11 divine sea gods out. However, at the moment Jiang Bai retreated, a white fist mark struck the void. In the fist light, there seemed to be a river of stars pouring down. Clang! That punch failed to penetrate Jiang Bai. A coat full of feathers appeared on his body at some point in time, forming a barrier in front of him, blocking the punch that seemed to be from a dominator. Creation sky-covering feather? Ji Heng, you deserve to die. Yes, Jiang Linxian appeared. Her body was like white jade, and white light appeared on her body, illuminating the sky. Even her eyes were jade-colored. Only then did Han Fei know that Jiang Bai's real name was Ji Heng. However, no matter what his name was, he would just take him as Jiang Bai. Jiang Bai chuckled. Well, this is your first son, Han Ling's supreme nature. Treasure. To be honest, this creation sky-covering feather is indeed extraordinary. Unfortunately, your son was too arrogant, so he can't blame others for dying early. After that, Jiang Bai smiled contemptuously. Jiang Linxian, it's really hard on you. You actually found the ancient supreme nature treasure, the primordial purple jade bracelet, so you can barely be ranked as a dominator with the white jade primordial body. However, you are not a dominator after all. You can't shake our eternal race with this. Let's see if I can. Suddenly, there was a divine light in the sea of stars. Seeing this, Jiang Bai's face changed slightly. He pushed the 11 sea-quelling gods away and shouted, "Go, kill Han Fei." As soon as he said so, a divine painting enveloped him. Jiang Bai snorted. One of the 3 ancient killing arrays, the infinite star array? Han Guangqiu, you must have been drawing this supreme clearness divine talisman for many years, right? Han Guangqiu's voice sounded leisurely. Believe it or not, I have a lot of divine talismans. Humph. The moment Han Guangqiu appeared, there was really no one on Han Fei's side. Jiang Bai smiled disdainfully. So what? When Jiang Linxian's white jade Primordial body loses its effect and your infinite star array dissipates. I'll bury you. With that, Jiang Bai looked at Han Fei sideways and smiled. It's been 18 seconds. How long can the death god exist? However, as soon as he said so, he narrowed his eyes slightly. This was because Han Fei, who had been standing there talking to him, had dissipated. Was this also a clone? Under the effect of void fishing, the existing time of the death god was very limited. How could Han Fei not know this? How could he really mean to talk nonsense with Jiang Bai there? Therefore, from the moment the creation star compass was activated, Han Fei's original body had never appeared. At this moment, the 11 sea-quelling gods had completely lost their target. Because Han Fei and the others had only sent so many people this time. They would be courting death if they went to the death god. The battle between Han Guanchu and Jiang Linxian had been upgraded to the Dominator level, so they couldn't participate. The first palace master of the Time Temple and Shiman Linglan disappeared. At this moment, the only people they could fight were the 10 Yama Kings and Senior Brother Azure Dragon. Choosing between the two, they didn't intend to participate in the battle against the 10 Yama Kings. This was because on the battlefield where the 10 Yama Kings were, a black flag appeared in the 10 Directions Purgatory. Although the Eternal Race didn't usually participate in the battles in the Sea Realm, they still knew some famous supreme nature treasures that had appeared in history. That black flag was the famous 10,000 soul banner in history. It was said that this flag could devour the soul, snatch one's killing intent, and seal one's power. Since ancient times, there had been frequent battles in the Sea Realm, and countless strong masters had died. The Immortal Temple specialized in harvesting death energy. God knew how many strong masters had collected their remnant souls and special techniques in this 10,000 soul banner. That thing could no longer be regarded as an ordinary supreme nature treasure. In comparison, they felt that it was easier to fight on Senior Brother Azure Dragon's side. After all, there were only 6 people there. No matter how powerful these 6 people were, they hadn't reached the Dominator level. Since they hadn't reached the Dominator level, it was still quite difficult for them to kill them. Besides, if they besieged him in all directions, it would be almost 4 against 1. In this case, their chances of winning were very high. Immediately, the 11 sea-quelling gods charged at Senior Brother Azure Dragon and the others. However, as soon as Han Fei arrived, he saw more than 20 divine bones, branches, carapace, petals, and other things appear around the 3 sea-quelling gods of the Time Temple. Buzz. In the interweaving of time, one ancient creature after another stepped through time. An ancient tree shot out billions of vines, sealing the sky. On the tree, dense silver needles burst out like peerless sword chi, pouring down like a tide. Peach-colored petals floated in the sky, sweeping across the boundless realm. After these petals were touched by the power of the battle, they immediately turned into a red mist. For a moment, illusions appeared in this world. There were humanoid insects whose bodies were made of spatial cracks and shadows that could summon the power of space. As soon as they attacked, billions of spatial cracks in the sky formed a tearing storm. There was also a white divine ape, which was extremely ferocious. Its fists were like stars, and its roar was like thunder. When it attacked, it could set off an energy tide. More importantly, its physique was astonishingly powerful. In fact, Han Fei had already expected this scene when he attacked. different tactics for different occasions. Although there were many sea-quelling gods in the eternal race, he had obtained countless bones of the chaotic era from Qingming. Among them, there were many more sea-quelling gods than in the eternal race. After all, how could this era be compared to the chaotic era? Perhaps in terms of gods, the eternal race was indeed not weak, but in terms of sea-quelling gods, there were a lot of strong masters born from the heavens and earth in the chaotic era. Although these strong masters were born from the heavens and earth, not everyone could become a dominator. However, even if they couldn't become a dominator, their basic talent was the highest, so their upper limit of growth was extremely high. Seeing this, the sea-quelling gods of the eternal race were stunned. Of course, they knew the time resurrection technique of the time temple, but they had to have the capital to be resurrected. With so many remains of sea-quelling gods, could it be that the time temple had bet all their wealth? The sea of stars was vast and endless. God knew where to find a sea-quelling god if he died in this vast sea of stars. Even if there were some sea-quelling gods who died in some battles in history, the time temple must have consumed these resources over the years. This time, they took out so many sea-quelling god-level items at once. They were determined to destroy the eternal race. In fact, not only were the people of the eternal race shocked, but the three sea-quelling gods of the time temple were also shocked. They had thought that what Han Fei gave them was at most the remains of ordinary sea-quelling gods. But the result was completely different from what they had expected. More than half of what Han Fei gave them were the kind of ancestral sea-quelling gods born in the chaotic world. Their combat power far exceeded that of ordinary sea-quelling gods. Han Fei wasn't surprised about this. He had sighed when he was in the chaotic era because of the difference in talent. The god-slayers in the chaotic era were super strong, so were the sea-quelling gods. Therefore, when Senior Brother Azure Dragon and the others saw that these sea-quelling gods chose to join the chaotic battle on their side in the end, they couldn't help but smile. Now, there would be a fight. Senior Brother Azure Dragon summoned the 24 heavens and held an ancient dragon scale in his hand, covering the sky and sealing this world. It was impossible to kill all these people, but before the resurrected ancient sea-quelling gods disappeared, it should be easy to kill 6 or 7 of them. It wasn't that Senior Brother Azure Dragon and the others didn't want to kill more, but because although they were also sea-quelling gods, they couldn't cut off the river of life like Han Fei. If they just forcibly obliterated it, killing 6 or 7 sea-quelling gods was already a terrifying number. After all, how many tens of thousands of years would it take for a sea-quelling god to appear in the sea realm? If they could easily kill all the sea-quelling gods on a head-on battlefield, how could they be called sea-quelling gods? At this moment, all parties were fighting fiercely, and the god-slaying and god-level powerhouses couldn't interfere at all. The moment the eternal race fell into the creation star compass, the level of this battle was destined to only be at the sea-quelling god level. And the key to victory could only be the clash of dominators. At this moment, the death god was fighting 2 dominators alone, causing a huge territory to be enveloped by death energy. Of the 2 dominators of the eternal race, one was surrounded by 8 long swords, and the other had a small golden 13-story tower behind him. Both of them were struggling to hold on at this moment. The 2 supreme nature treasures were dim. Even so, their bodies were still corroded by some indescribable power. They had already changed into 2 sets of battle suits, and their bodies were already covered in livor mortis, to varying degrees. In front of the death god was a long book, from which death rays kept spewing out. As for the death god himself, he summoned boundless death energy, which turned into billions of spear beams and bombarded him. The golden tower burst out with light, narrowly resisting the continuous death. A dominator on the opposite side roared, "Death God, the life and death book is just a supreme nature treasure after all. In such a short period of time, no matter how strong you are, you can't break the creation mystic yellow tower." Swish. 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 At the same time, in front of Heavenly Soul Dominator, 8 blood-colored swords were lined up. The void seemed to be filled with the ancient aura of the primordial era as they slashed at the death god. The death god extended his claw, and the boundless death energy turned into a sharp claw, like the hand of a demon god in the sea of stars. Clang! 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 Amidst the raging energy, Heavenly Soul Dominator was sent flying with his sword. The flesh and blood on his body instantly turned into powder, leaving only his supreme bones that flickered with a dazzling light. At the same time, black water currents clung to the supreme bones, trying to entangle and corrode them, forcing the Heavenly Soul Ruler to obliterate the water of death first before recovering his body. At this moment, the death god slowly said, "The creation mystic yellow tower and the primordial 8 fierce swords were both supreme nature treasures that Li Daoi gave to Jing Guanming, the guardian of the divine realm." Li Daoi killed his way through the primordial era. Jing Guanming punished all evils. They are both the most ferocious persons in the world. The things they used are all treasures that they tempered in a sea of blood. And your two's killing intent and ferociousness can't even stimulate 50% of the power of these two things. How dare you compare to my life and death book? On the other side of life, the destination of the dead, the chaotic divine tomb, and even the heavens can't stop them. Order. Heavenly Soul Dominator hurriedly met up with another dominator. The creation mystic yellow tower immediately burst out with a strange light. However, this strange light only bloomed for less than a second before the void here turned into a lone tomb, burying the two of them in it. At this moment, the lonely tomb hadn't closed yet. In the death god's hand, the life and death book turned into a black silk scroll, locking the divine light of the mystic yellow tower. Bang! At this point, the death god suddenly appeared in front of the two of them and pushed his palms forward. Both of them felt boundless power, causing their souls to tremble and cracks to appear on their supreme bones. "It's about time." Suddenly, the death god spoke. A time river suddenly appeared, enveloping Heavenly Soul Dominator. At this moment, the first palace master of the Time Temple, Shiman Linglan, and the 3 sea-quelling gods of the Time Temple were all in the battle, so they naturally couldn't get involved in the battle of the Death God, nor were qualified to participate. Therefore, the time river that appeared at this moment could only come from Han Fei. In an instant, the timeline here changed multiple times, and tens of thousands of time illusions sucked Heavenly Soul Dominator in. This was the most important part of Han Fei's 100-year plan. Heavenly Soul Dominator didn't have the protection of the creation mystic yellow tower just now, so he was hit by the death god. It wasn't that he didn't feel the time river, but that he didn't feel that there was someone in the time river. It was as if this time river had appeared out of thin air. However, when he came back to his senses from this space-time, this place was empty, and he was the only one left. Stop pretending. Even without the protection of the creation mystic yellow tower, how can you kill me? Buzz. At that moment, infinite energy erupted from the heavenly soul ruler's body. He wanted to destroy the black liquid left on his supreme bone by the death god. This thing blocked him from condensing his body. Without his body's chi and blood, his strength had dropped by 30%. It was definitely not a good thing to lose 30% of his combat power in a game with the death god. After all, he was a dominator. Although he couldn't beat the death god, it didn't mean that he couldn't obliterate the power of the death god. In just 2 seconds, Heavenly Soul Dominator obliterated the black liquid. Then, in less than half a second, his body had recovered. However, the moment his strength recovered, he saw a death divine claw grabbing at him. This was the power of the death god. Just now, Heavenly Soul Dominator was slapped away by this claw, leaving black liquid on his body. At this moment, this power appeared again, and the same result happened again. Heavenly Soul Dominator was sent flying, and his body dissipated again, leaving only the supreme bone. Furthermore, there was a black liquid on the supreme bone again, trying to corrode and penetrate it. Time dilemma, a circulation technique? A displaced timeline? Heavenly Soul Dominator snorted. Han Fei, it's you, isn't it? The power of this time predicament is even weaker than the one of the first palace master of the Time Temple. How dare you try to stop me? With that, the pupils of Heavenly Soul Dominator turned dazzling white, as if he could see through the time predicament Han Fei had set up at a glance. The 8 swords behind him combined into one and broke through thousands of timelines in a row. Heavenly Soul Dominator didn't care at all. Even if he was in a different timeline, he was still powerful. The power of a dominator, coupled with a treasure like the primordial 8 fierce swords, was not something the timeline Han Fei set up could resist. However, at the same time as the Heavenly Soul Dominator cut open these timelines, another death god's claw rushed over and corroded his body again. Huh? Heavenly Soul Dominator was also stunned. These 1,000 timelines were actually enveloped by a time illusion. He had thought that this predicament could be unfolded with a single slash, but he only cut through one illusion. This time, not only was his flesh and blood corroded by the death god's claw, but he also felt that someone was trying to shake his vitality. Yes, it was actually too difficult to trap and kill Heavenly Soul Dominator in a time predicament. The death god would disappear in at most 10 seconds. Once the death god disappeared, the situation outside would be instantly reversed. Because of the addition of 2 dominators. Therefore, he had to kill Heavenly Soul Dominator in 10 seconds. Otherwise, his 100-year plan would fail. Therefore, Han Fei couldn't just wait for the time predicament to slowly obliterate Heavenly Soul Dominator. Therefore, he chose to take the initiative to cut off the river of life of Heavenly Soul Dominator. However, as soon as this technique was used, the Heavenly Soul Dominator discovered it. As the powerful power of the Heavenly Soul Dominator shook this place, all laws were messed up, and even the laws of life were shattered. The power of a dominator lay in the fact that sometimes, it was unreasonable. Its powerful perception and sensitivity to the operation of laws were too strong. Buzz. In the time river, the time vortex trembled. Not only did Han Fei fail to cut off the river of life of Heavenly Soul Dominator, but he was also injured. Heavenly Soul Dominator, who only had supreme bones left, suddenly looked at the time river and sneered. "I've found you. Han Fei, you're just a sea quelling god. Who gave you the courage to scheme against me?" Swish. The primordial 8 fierce swords tore open the time river, and Heavenly Soul Dominator came directly to the time vortex. Although he couldn't see where Han Fei was, he knew that Han Fei was in this vortex, or the vortex itself. Heavenly Soul Dominator snorted and raised his hand, trying to shatter the time vortex with the primordial 8 fierce swords. However, faster than the primordial 8 fierce swords, a broadsword beam suddenly burst out of the vortex. The power of this broadsword beam had reached the Dominator level, and this broadsword beam was filled with killing intent. Clank. This terrifying slash was instantly blocked by the primordial 8 fierce swords. Only then did Heavenly Soul Dominator see that it was a knife light, composed of countless knife fragments. Yes, this was the power of the blood sky blade again. Heavenly Soul Dominator looked indifferently at the primordial 8 fierce swords that seemed to be about to be broken at any time and snorted. Han Fei, you are not even a sea-quelling god. You know too little about the power of a Dominator. Although your slash does have the power of a Dominator and is indeed very powerful, its level of power is not enough. Boom. After only 1 second, the primordial 8 fierce swords were broken by Han Fei's slash. As for Heavenly Soul Dominator, he just used his supreme bones to hold the strongest blow of the blood sky blade. In the end, the crazy power flowed past Heavenly Soul Dominator. At this moment, an invisible slight fluctuation seemed to be trying to leave the time vortex. Buzz. Unfortunately, Heavenly Soul Dominator grabbed an invisible force with one hand and laughed out loud. Ha ha ha. Han Fei, have you forgotten that Yurine Yang twin spirit swallowing fish is only at the peak of the great monarch realm? How dare you leave in front of me? At this moment, Han Fei finally turned into his original body and was strangled by Heavenly Soul Dominator with an invisible hand, unable to move. Han Fei's reaction was extremely fast. A third eye opened between his eyebrows, and his body was shining with golden light. The invisible hand could no longer control him. The second level of the path of invincibility? Heavenly Soul Dominator was quite knowledgeable and could tell Han Fei's invincible body at a glance. Once Han Fei was given a chance to escape, Heavenly Soul Dominator didn't know if he could still catch him. Therefore, Heavenly Soul Dominator didn't hesitate. He also stepped in front of Han Fei, pressed his palm on Han Fei's chest, and sneered. The invincible body has an upper limit after all. However, the moment the Heavenly Soul Dominator appeared in front of Han Fei, he suddenly saw the surrounding scene change inexplicably. He suddenly appeared on a green jade stone bridge. At this moment, he was pressing his palm on Han Fei's chest, but he couldn't cause any substantial damage. The path of reincarnation? Heavenly Soul Dominator's expression suddenly changed drastically. His strength was all suppressed. His strength had already been weakened by 30%. Because of the power of the Death God. Now, he had fallen into the path of reincarnation. Although he was a Dominator, he couldn't resist the suppressing power of the path of reincarnation. At this moment, his laws were dissipating crazily. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, and he slowly said, "Do you really think I dare to attack you without any backing? Haven't you eternal race been looking for the path of reincarnation? Now that the path of reincarnation has delivered itself to you, why don't you look happy at all?" Heavenly Soul Dominator's face finally changed, not because of the Death God, let alone Han Fei, but because of the path of reincarnation. If the path of reincarnation was really so easy to solve, he wouldn't have frequently sent people to test it. Buzz. The heavenly soul dominator still tried to mobilize all his strength to resist the rules of the path of reincarnation. However, the more he wanted to erupt, the stronger the suppressing power from the path of reincarnation would be, and the faster the laws would dissipate. Han Fei grinned. On the path of reincarnation, I am the real master. With that, Han Fei clasped Heavenly Soul Dominator with both hands and pulled him into the river of laws. With the blood of the Dominator, the gods dared to walk on the bridge of the path of reincarnation. However, the dissipation effect of the river of laws on laws was 10 times stronger than the suction force on the bridge. When Han Fei took Luo Xiaobai and the others to stack laws in the river, they needed Han Fei's protection. When Han Fei took Shiman Linglan upstream this river with him, for 180 years, he didn't dare to let go of Shiman Linglan. Now, the supreme bone of Heavenly Soul Dominator seemed to have encountered a strong acid and bubbled crazily. Seeing this, even Han Fei couldn't help being surprised. As expected of a Dominator. At this speed, even if this river of laws wanted to completely kill a Heavenly Soul Dominator, it would probably take several days. Roar. Han Fei, even if you can kill me, so what? Once the Death God disappears, the first palace master of the Time Temple and Han Guanshu won't be able to kill a Dominator. Our eternal race still has 4 Dominators. It's impossible for all of them to be tricked by you. Why don't we each take a step back and I'll give you the small vine of the demon purification pot? In addition, I'll help you save the first battlefield. Han Fei sneered. There's no turning back. I never negotiate with my enemies. If you become my enemy, there can only be one result, which is death. As for what happens to the other 4 Dominators, that's my business. If I can kill you, I can kill them. Han Fei, there are countless strong masters and 50,000 gods in our eternal race. Do you know how much impact it will have if we participate in the ominous battle? Heavenly Soul Dominator roared angrily. At this moment, he had to compromise. On the path of reincarnation, he couldn't exert his strength, so he could only wait for death. As one of the leaders of the eternal race, how could he die here? Unfortunately, Han Fei wasn't moved at all. Instead, he smiled in disdain. 50,000 gods is a lot, but you've experienced the primordial era. Don't you know how many gods were born in that era? At that time, there were more than 100,000 gods. I would believe you if you said 1,000,000. But did they win against the ominous? So, just wait for death and peace. I will. Let the gods of your eternal race, who relied on stealing the fruits of the divine tribulation, know what dream bubbles are. Buzz. Heavenly Soul Dominator felt the river of life tremble. Obviously, Han Fei was cutting off his river of life. Outside the path of reincarnation, Han Fei indeed couldn't shake the river of life of a Dominator, but in the path of reincarnation, Heavenly Soul Dominator couldn't activate the power of a Dominator at all, let alone shatter Han Fei's river of life. He could only let Han Fei do whatever he wanted. And Heavenly Soul Dominator knew that once the river of life was cut off by Han Fei, the vitality contained in the supreme bones couldn't resist the river of laws and Han Fei's forcible stripping. Blood Soul Technique. The supreme bone of Heavenly Soul Dominator turned blood red, as if he had used all its strength, trying to shake the path of reincarnation. For a moment, the path of reincarnation began to tremble, and the green jade stone bridge began to shake. The 100,000 strong line was shaken to the point Of staggering. Han Fei snorted. Enforce the law. Swish. 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 The law enforcement divine chain immediately attached to the body of Heavenly Soul Dominator, who shouted, "Ha ha ha, Han Fei, you brat, you can't kill me in the end. Even if I enter the creation divine prison, it can't obliterate me with its strength. No matter what your plan is, you won't be able to kill me." Really? I spent 100 years to set up this trap. Do you really think you can escape? Han Fei sneered. The moment the law enforcement divine chain attached to Heavenly Soul Dominator, Han Fei finally cut off the river of life of Heavenly Soul Dominator. But it was impossible for Han Fei to let the creation divine prison seal Heavenly Soul Dominator. Before the creation divine prison convicted Heavenly Soul Dominator, Han Fei left the path of reincarnation and returned to this time predicament. At this moment, although Heavenly Soul Dominator, who was caught by the law enforcement divine chain, didn't know what Han Fei was doing, after leaving the path of reincarnation, he wanted to see if the law enforcement divine chain really couldn't be broken free. For a moment, Heavenly Soul Dominator unleashed his full strength, trying to break free from the law enforcement divine chain. The creation divine prison had just appeared and was convicting Heavenly Soul Dominator. On the other hand, suddenly, 3,000 Han Fei appeared here, all of whom were his original bodies. Buzz. The 3,000 Han Fei activated the law of life at the same time to extract the vitality of Heavenly Soul Dominator. Even Heavenly Soul Dominator was stunned. The river of life had been severed, and his strength was first suppressed by the path of reincarnation and then by the law enforcement divine chain. At this moment, he couldn't avoid Han Fei's law of life at all. Almost instantly, the dazzling supreme bone of Heavenly Soul Dominator lost all vitality. Yes, everything was for this moment. The Death God created an opportunity to send Heavenly Soul Dominator into Han Fei's time predicament. Han Fei deliberately used himself as bait to let Heavenly Soul Dominator discover something wrong. Then Han Fei used all his strength to launch a Dominator level blow, pretended to be exhausted, and escaped with his invincible body, luring Heavenly Soul Dominator to embark on the path of reincarnation. He then would cut off his river of life on the path of reincarnation, sealed Heavenly Soul Dominator's power with the law enforcement divine chain, and used the time-splitting technique that he had prepared for 100 years to extract his vitality. If anything went wrong with this plan, it was very likely to fail. However, Han Fei did it. Rumble. Dong. 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 At that moment, in the creation star compass, above the vast sea of stars, the great Tao rumbled, the heavens were ignited with a blush, and the entire sea of stars was filled with a blood-colored brilliance. The continuous heavenly Tao death knells shocked everyone. The old dragon god shouted, "The heavenly Tao is crying blood, and the heavens are mourning. This is, a Dominator has died." For a moment, Senior Brother Azure Dragon and the others were slightly relieved, and a smile appeared on their faces. As for the countless people of the eternal race, they had never seen such a scene before. At this moment, they were only horrified, feeling that this astronomical phenomenon was too terrifying. Seeing this, under the black robe, the face in the shadow put on a faint smile and disappeared in the next moment. Chapter 35 40 50,000 gods accompany me to transcend the divine tribulation. 1. The death of a Dominator was no small matter. Jiang Bai, who was fighting And the two dominators trapped by the 10 Yama kings were both shocked. Their first guess was that the death god had unleashed some extraordinary method and forcibly killed a dominator-level powerhouse. However, this was too shocking. They admitted that the death god was very powerful, but it couldn't be so powerful that he could kill a dominator in just dozens of seconds. Even the dominator Ominous couldn't have been killed so quickly, right? Bam bam. Almost at the same time as the weather changed, the death energy in the area enveloped by the death god quickly faded. Everyone saw a lone tomb standing in the sea of stars. From the lone tomb, there were continuous explosions, as if someone was trapped inside. The death god has indeed disappeared. The dissipation of the death energy and the continuous sounds coming from the lonely tomb were good proof. If the death god was still there, it was impossible for the people trapped inside to pry open this lonely tomb in such a short period of time. Swish. Time intertwined, and Han Fei's figure appeared in front of the tomb. Humph. Han Fei didn't do anything to the lonely tomb but left the creation divine prison here. He said, "Senior, I've killed the Dominator. It's up to you whether to fight or not." Han Fei bet that the person inside would definitely take action. He didn't believe that anyone was willing to stay in the creation divine prison for the rest of their lives. After all, this was a cage. Was he going to wait for death inside? It was better to die than wait for death. He had naturally thought that the person locked up in the creation divine prison might not be a good person, but what did it matter? Whether he was a good person or not, the sea of stars was about to be destroyed. It didn't matter what kind of person the person inside was. As long as he didn't want to die, as long as he still had desires, pursuits, and thoughts, he should take action. As for whether he would become a helper of the eternal race or not, it was absolutely impossible. The eternal race in the primordial era was a useless race. There were countless people that could easily destroy them in that era. It was impossible for the eternal race to have such a powerful member to be locked up in the creation divine prison. Leave the primordial 8 fierce swords behind. Just as Han Fei had turned around and was about to leave, a voice came into Han Fei's mind from the creation divine prison. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Without any hesitation, the law enforcement divine chain floated quietly beside the creation divine prison. With the primordial 8 fierce swords. Leaving the primordial 8 fierce swords behind, Han Fei stepped out. At this moment, the remaining dominators were restrained, and the sea quelling. Gods were trapped. Even if they could break free, it might take them at least hundreds of seconds. During this period of time, no one could keep Han Fei in check. Jiang Bai, who was fighting Jiang Linxian, shouted, "The god-slaying level and god-level powerhouses of the eternal race, listen up. Han Fei is only a peak-level great monarch. Even if he can barely become a sea-quelling god, his strength is limited. Block him. As long as we defend Han Fei for an hour, the eternal race will definitely win." For a moment, on the eternal race's side, countless god-slaying and god-level powerhouses all soared into the sky. They had to take action. This was a great disaster for the eternal race. The Dominator said an hour, which made them immediately relieved. The sea quelling god was powerful, but it would be a joke if 300 god-slaying level powerhouses couldn't even defend against Han Fei for an hour. However, before they could be happy, they saw Dao bones and ancient remains appear behind Han Fei. In the next moment, time intertwined, and ancient creatures left time one after another. Among them, ferocious beasts formed groups and roared. Demon. Plants were everywhere, and plants grew crazily. Giant demons flew across the sky, comparable to stars. Primordial humans reappeared in the world. In the blink of an eye, more than 300 god-slaying level powerhouses from the chaotic era appeared behind Han Fei. Yes, it wasn't that Han Fei didn't have enough divine bones. After all, he wasn't a real sea-quelling god. He couldn't use all his strength to revive these divine bones. 300 was already his limit. With his sea-quelling god-level strength, he could probably summon them for 300 seconds. If he summoned a god at the level of sea-quelling god, Han Fei might only be able to revive more than 30 people at most, and the time limit was probably less than 100 seconds. After all, the gap between the god-slaying level and the sea-quelling god was actually quite large. However, these 300 god-slaying level ancient powerhouses were enough to make those people suffer. These were god-slaying level powerhouses from the chaotic era. Only when they fought would they know what kind of abnormal people they had encountered. For a moment, great techniques flew all over the sky. The two parties fought without any nonsense. A strong master of the eternal race swept his knife light at the neck of an ancient god-slaying powerhouse. However, the ancient human who was attacked actually put his hands in front of his neck, crushed the knife light, and rushed into the army of gods fearlessly. The resurrected had no weapons or even consciousness. They could only fight with their instincts, which were actually very crazy. Han Fei's order was to kill the group of god-slaying level powerhouses on the opposite side, so they didn't care about their own situation at all and activated their strongest killing technique. Someone was pierced, but he didn't care about his injuries at all and punched through the person who injured him. Some strange beasts were tied up by the ball cage and chose to self-destruct. It didn't matter how they fought. The casualties didn't matter either. What mattered was that the group of god-slaying level powerhouses were stopped. Chapter 35-41 50,000 gods accompany me to transcend the divine tribulation, 2. Otherwise, if Han Fei fought so many god-slaying level powerhouses, he might not be able to kill them even if his strength dropped to the peak of the great monarch realm, let alone an hour. Without the obstruction of the god-slaying level, although the 50,000 eternal race gods wanted to stop Han Fei, they couldn't at all. Boom. Tens of thousands of lightning marks passed through these gods, but they didn't attack them. Han Fei's goal was the luck of the entire eternal race. Boom. As Han Fei attacked, the power of the sea-quelling god's blow swept across. Thousands of kilometers of energy ripples, crushing ordinary people below the level of billions of eternal race gods. Han Fei. Shoal, stop. Villain, you're the human emperor. How can you attack ordinary people? For a moment, the gods were angry. They had thought that Han Fei's goal was them, but they never expected that Han Fei's goal was those ordinary people. Even Jiang Bai didn't understand. Han Fei should be in a hurry to quickly weaken the basic combat power of the eternal race. What was the significance of his attack on ordinary people? Han Fei laughed out loud. Everyone in the eternal race is a thief. You grow by stealing the fruits of the myriad races. Even ordinary people of your race are not qualified to survive in this world. Boom, boom, boom. Han Fei attacked consecutively. Wherever the range was, no one below the level of a god could escape. Before the 50,000 gods could react, 10 billion people in the rear of the eternal race had already died under Han Fei's madness. At this moment, some gods of the eternal race finally realized what was going on and tried to rush up to block Han Fei. However, when Han Fei killed more than 30 gods in a row with the immortal slaying knife in 1 second, no god dared to attack again. Those were god-level powerhouses, but more than 30 of them had been killed with one slash. Even if there were indeed a lot of them, how could they withstand such a terrifying power? More importantly, if it were other sea-quelling gods, they might have a chance to be resurrected, but Han Fei directly cut off the river of life. They didn't even have a chance to be resurrected. At that moment, the Dominator trapped by the 10 Yamas of hell, even Jiang Bai, didn't hesitate to fight with all his strength. But this was a premeditated war after all. No one in this world would have thought that Han Fei would launch a war of extermination against the eternal race at this moment, when all the Dominators were caught in the battle. It hadn't even been 50 seconds since the battle began. In such a short period of time, even if Jiang Bai and the Dominator wanted to, it was difficult for them to break out of the siege of the 10 Yama kings, Jiang, Lin Xian, and the others. At this moment, the power of a sea-quelling god was completely highlighted. Han Fei killed wantonly, regardless of the cost. This would be the most number of creatures he had killed in his life, and it might never happen again. Among the eternal race, below the level of gods, except for the great monarchs, who were relatively far away from Han Fei's attacks, the rest had no chance at all to survive the terrifying energy tide that Han Fei unleashed. In just 10 seconds, nearly 20 billion eternal race members had completely perished in the creation star compass. In the eyes of ordinary people, killing one person was a crime, killing 10,000 people was a hero, and killing 1 million people was a hero among heroes. But when this number rose to hundreds of millions, anyone's mentality would change. At this moment, Han Fei suddenly understood the high and mighty powerhouses. The powerhouses who regarded mortals as ants. He couldn't even see how the eternal race members died, because under the energy tide, they were directly annihilated, not even leaving a body. At that moment, Han Fei somewhat understood Songtian. Everyone is nothing but ants. It was not a slogan. When Songtian transcended his tribulation, he did feel this way, which was his truest feeling. However, Han Fei didn't have Songtian's conditions. From Songtian's birth to his unification of the 6 lineages and conquering of the Sea of Stars, there were too many conditions that supported him to develop this thought of supremacy and gain the heart of a supreme. In the vast Sea of Stars, few people recognized Han Fei. Although he had taken pains to conquer the Central Sea Divine Realm, at this moment, he couldn't borrow the power of the myriad races in the Sea Realm. Therefore, Han Fei had been gambling. He bet that he could swallow the luck of the eternal race and find a way to break the ice in the 800-year period agreed with senior sister Shenlu. After all, because Han Fei had killed too many eternal race members, some of the 50,000 gods finally couldn't stand the pain of extinction. Someone shouted, "Kill Han Fei. If he doesn't die, the eternal race will be wiped out. We'll still die. Kill. Kill. I'm not afraid of death. Even if I die, I can just enter the path of reincarnation. I might still have a chance to reincarnate in the future." These people didn't know that the path of reincarnation was with Han Fei, or they wouldn't have shouted such a slogan. However, even if some people were angry and no longer waited, trying to stop Han Fei with their lives, there were still too few people they could summon. There were only 3,000 gods who responded to this call among the 50,000 gods. Yes, humans were selfish. The other gods all felt that at least Hanfei hadn't attacked them yet. As for the Dominator-level powerhouses, they were only temporarily trapped by those sea-quelling gods. As long as any Dominator escaped, the situation could be changed. Chapter 35-42 50,000 gods accompany me to transcend the divine tribulation. 3. At this moment, waiting was more meaningful than rushing up to die. A small number of the 3,000 gods rushed at Hanfei. These people were shrewd, because they knew that they couldn't catch up with Hanfei at all. Although they hated Hanfei very much and hoped to stop him, on the other hand, they were afraid of death, but still wanted to pretend to be brave for others or even Dominator-level powerhouses to see. Most of them dispersed and took the initiative to protect the eternal race. However, for Hanfei, 3,000 people was too few. As for god-slaying level powerhouses, 300 would be enough to stop Hanfei for half an hour, or even 200. However, before the gods broke through the shackles, the gap between their combat power and Hanfei was too great. Especially the gods of the eternal race who relied on stealing the fruits of the divine tribulation, the gap between them and Hanfei was nearly 10 times. However, this couldn't be calculated purely by combat power. That was the difference in the level of source power. Back then, Hanfei and Qiu Wanren used more than 100 remnant souls of gods to stop and kill a god-slaying level powerhouse from the Central Sea Divine Realm, although Qiu Wanren was stronger than the other party. Although the remnant souls couldn't fight continuously, because each of them could only launch a powerful attack or show the power of a god for a moment at most, under the attack of the sea-quelling gods, these gods of the eternal race were no better than remnant souls. Many of them could only unleash their strength once. However, it was better to have gods take action than nothing. Hanfei fought his way through and encountered the resistance of gods. If he wanted to kill a large number of people at once, he had to kill the gods first. And killing those gods would at least delay him the time of one blow. Besides, in order to protect their clansmen, these gods were relatively scattered, which would waste even more time. 100 seconds later, Hanfei had already killed more than 1,000 gods, but because of the resistance of the gods, Hanfei could only kill another 20 billion Eternals. Seeing this scene, many of the remaining gods were already tempted. Even if Hanfei could maintain such an efficient combat state, he could kill at most 5,000 gods in half an hour. In fact, they could protect the remaining 60 billion members of the eternal race. Boom! Suddenly, the Dominator who was besieged by the 10 Yama kings seemed to have activated a secret technique and forcibly blasted open a corner of the 10 directions purgatory, seriously injuring a Yama king. The Dominator shouted, "All gods, attack. If you don't attack now, I'll personally kill all of you to appease the 10 billion heroic spirits of the eternal race." This cry made the expressions of countless gods change. For a moment, someone gritted his teeth and shouted, "Attack. Gather the power of our gods and resist with all our strength. As long as we block Hanfei, it will be the victory of the eternal race." Hearing that the Dominator was going to kill them with his own hands, these people had no choice but to move. If they tried to stop Hanfei, at most 5,000 gods would die. But if the Dominator took action, tens of thousands would die. Boom! At this moment, the lone tomb set up by the death god was torn apart by the power of the Dominator. Hanfei couldn't help but be distracted. He saw a figure rush out of the lone tomb. Behind him, there was a small golden tower, shining with divine light. In the end, without the suppression of the death god, the lone tomb was penetrated in only 100 seconds. Just as Han Fei's heart sank, with a bang, the law enforcement divine chain, like a divine whip, suddenly shattered that domain. As soon as the eternal race's dominator rushed out, he was whipped away. At the same time, the primordial 8 fierce swords instantly intertwined into a huge sword net. Then, it froze in all directions, forming 8 sword chi chains that sealed that domain. However, for some reason, that person still didn't appear. Huff. Although that person didn't appear, Han Fei, Old Han, and the 10 kings of Hell were all relieved. The one in the creation divine prison finally took action, which made them relieved. At this moment, on the side of the 10 kings of Hell, a king of Hell shouted, "Human Emperor, we can hold on for another hour at most." Han Fei looked at Old Han and Old Han shouted, "Son, do what you want. You don't have to worry about us." Senior brother Azure Dragon also shouted, "Little junior brother, on our side. None of the sea-quelling gods can escape." Han Fei knew that everyone was trying their best. However, no matter how hard they tried, a sea-quelling god was only a sea-quelling god, including the first palace master of the Time Temple and Shiman Linglan. Although they could trap the Dominator for a while, this was definitely not a long-term solution. Once they lost their combat power, even Old Han and the others probably wouldn't be able to stop the Dominator for a short period of time. At that time, the one in the creation divine prison wouldn't be able to fight for alone. Finally, Han Fei stopped and stood proudly in the air, looking up as if stretching his body. Seeing this, the gods of the eternal race were uneasy. They wished that Han Fei could continue to rest like this forever. At this moment, a rain of blood poured down on Han Fei like a waterfall. In the sky, the morning bell was wailing. It was the morning bell of the death of the sea-quelling god. The bell was thunderous and shook the sea of stars. Han Fei suddenly roared, "Tribulation! Come!" Yes, this was Han Fei's last bet. This time, he was not only here for the demon purification pot's vine, but also to bet that he could break the supreme technique. At that moment, the rain of blood that filled the sky suddenly stopped. They floated in the air and then shattered into spirals of red smoke, quickly gathering and turning into boundless clouds. Chapter 35 43 50,000 gods accompany me to transcend the divine tribulation. 4. Rumble. At that moment, wherever the rain of blood fell, tribulation clouds gathered. For a moment, red clouds covered the sky and even the endless sea of stars. Han Fei opened his hands and took off his battle suits. As he slowly opened his eyes, infinite energy tides and the power of laws gathered around him. The heavens unified the myriad races and cultivated the heart of a supreme. With his will, he became a supreme first, then broke through his body, fused origin power into his bones, absorbed the power of faith, cultivated the supreme bones, and entered the Dominator realm. Han Fei stood quietly in the void. What was the heart of a supreme? He didn't understand. Did he have to unify all races? Even if he could do it, he didn't have the time to do it. Han Fei murmured in a low voice that only he could hear, "I also have people I want to protect. Even if I don't have the supreme heart, I'm destined to be a supreme. I am immortal." It wasn't that the supreme technique cultivators couldn't transcend the tribulation, but that they couldn't succeed in it, so they could only die. Therefore, Han Fei chose to bet on this last battle. Countless people saw that behind Han Fei, the wheel of life began to spin, and a river extremely obscure yet full of infinite vitality flowed over from behind him. Is that the river of life? Can the river of life be materialized? For ordinary people, they knew their river of life and knew that their vitality actually came from the river of life. However, this mysterious thing had never appeared in the world. But today, they saw that the river flowing with light green water seemed to be covered in a layer of divine brilliance. This was Han Fei's reliance. As long as the river of life was here, he wouldn't die. Even if he couldn't break the limit of the supreme technique, so what? As long as his vitality wasn't destroyed, he wouldn't die. The path of the supreme technique had to be cleared. Of course, this kind of breakthrough was still not a good idea for Han Fei. But Han Fei had no choice. If he couldn't break through to the supreme Tao, he wouldn't be able to take down the eternal race and take the little vine of the demon purification pot, let alone change the layout of the first battlefield. As a human, sometimes he had selfishly thought that he just needed to save Xia Xiaochan, Han Chani, Luo Xiaobai, and the others. However, what would happen next? Then, the first battlefield would be broken. The ominous would break through the defense line, and the Sea of Stars would be completely invaded. At that time, a large area of the Sea of Stars would fall, and the next target of the ominous would be the Sea Realm. At that time, where could he hide? How could he protect the people he cared about? Now, there were only 100 years left before the agreement between Senior Sister Shenlu and him. Therefore, he had no choice. However, he couldn't just blindly bet. With the experience of Tsangtian, Han Fei actually had a certain idea. However, an idea was an idea after all. Without putting it into practice, no one knew if he could succeed. At this moment, when the tens of thousands of gods saw that Han Fei stopped and chose to transcend the tribulation, they were a little happy at first, but then their faces were filled with anxiety. They knew that Han Fei's real strength was only at the peak of the great monarch realm. As a peak-level great monarch, he could use the combat power of a sea-quelling god and treat gods as ants. If he really transcended the divine tribulation, what would happen? As for Jiang Bai, his eyes flashed. He was not surprised. He just didn't understand where Han Fei's confidence came from. Since Han Fei dared to transcend the tribulation, had he found a way to crack the supreme technique? How is it possible? Since the primordial era, no one has been able to break the limit of the supreme technique. How can Han Fei do that? Even Han Guanqiu and Jiang Linxian were worried. Just as what they said after the battle of the divine descendants, they couldn't interfere with Han Fei's path anymore, because Han Fei's path had already exceeded their boundaries. Even the two of them had only heard of someone from the human race breaking the limit of the supreme technique. But the reality was that no one had done it since the primordial era. Even the god of war, who had once been highly regarded, stopped in the end. In order to break through this path, he had to embark on an extremely difficult path. At this moment, a god said, "Everyone, I have a bold idea. If we invade his divine tribulation, it will definitely affect his divine tribulation and even greatly increase the power of his divine tribulation. Although we are no match for him, can't we use the power of heaven and earth to kill him?" The moment this person spoke, unexpectedly, many gods even secretly retreated a little. Come on, once they fell into this guy's divine tribulation, who could guarantee that they wouldn't die? If they didn't leave the range of the divine Tribulation in time, they would definitely suffer no matter who they were. They weren't that crazy. Someone said, if he's willing to transcend the tribulation, let him. Even if he successfully transcends the tribulation and becomes a sea-quelling god, so what? After transcending the tribulation, I'm afraid Master Ruler will have finished fighting. That's right. Isn't falling into this divine tribulation equivalent to courting death? Someone suggested, Han Fei is only a peak-level great monarch after all. Why don't we let our great monarchs fight him? As soon as this person said so, countless gods rolled their eyes. Were you out of your mind when you stole the divine tribulation fruit? Even the gods didn't dare to go there, and you want a great monarch to fight him? Suddenly, Han Fei looked at the gods behind the eternal race. He raised his hand, and the time river appeared. The time chains that filled the sky extended out of the time river and finally sealed the realm they were in, forming a wall of time. This scene stunned countless gods. Han Fei chuckled. There's no need to argue. All of you, come in and accompany me. Not good, it's the time-sky sealing lock. Someone exclaimed. The time-sky sealing lock of the time temple was the only defensive technique among the 6 divine techniques of time. It was undoubtedly powerful. These 50,000 gods were not strong enough. It was extremely difficult for them to break the time-sky sealing lock. What does he mean? Is he courting death? We have 50,000 gods. How dare he seal us? Not good. Han Fei must want to die. He wants us to die with him. Damn it. Let's work together to break through the time-sky sealing lock. Han Fei laughed out loud. My name is Han Fei. Although I don't have the heart of a supreme, I'm destined to be a supreme. Today, I bet with the heavens and earth with the billions of creatures in the eternal race. I want to have the strongest supreme divine tribulation in history. Let's see if you can break my fate. Another lunatic. In the 4th level of the creation divine prison, someone sighed. Outside, Old Han and Jiang Linxian were both shocked. Fair, what are you doing? Son. Senior brother Azure Dragon said, little junior brother, don't act rashly. Even Jiang Bai's heart sank. He had never seen anyone break the limit of the supreme technique, but Han Fei seemed to be crazy at this moment. The divine tribulation hadn't completely gathered, but he had sealed the entire eternal race. Did he know how terrifying a heavenly change this would cause? If Han Fei only made a breakthrough himself, the divine tribulation might only target him. No matter how strong he was, there was a limit. However, no one in history had tried to lock the eternal race within the range of the divine tribulation. There was once a person's divine tribulation that only covered a small city, but that person was obliterated before he could even withstand the 3rd divine tribulation. But Han Fei directly included 50,000 gods in the range of the divine tribulation. Wasn't he crazy? But Han Fei didn't care at all. For him, whether he locked the eternal race in or not, his divine tribulation was still unknown. Since it was still unknown, why couldn't he drag the eternal race in? More importantly, he wanted to borrow the luck of the eternal race, but the reality was that although he could unleash the strength of a sea-quelling god, there were too many enemy powerhouses, and the other party's dominator was trapped for a limited time. He didn't have time. Even the creation star compass itself began to tremble. The sea of stars in its body couldn't withstand such a terrifying divine tribulation. After all, he was just a supreme nature treasure. Crack. A crisp sound spread throughout the sea of stars. The crack on the creation. Star compass cracked again. This time, it wasn't caused by anyone, but by the self-destruction of the creation star compass. Han Fei was crazy. He wasn't crazy yet. If Han Fei really condensed the strongest divine tribulation since ancient times, the creation star compass would definitely collapse. Now, destroying the gap and connecting to the sea of stars was his only way to protect himself. Sure enough, as soon as the gap opened, infinite power, tens of thousands of laws, and a tide of laws surged crazily into the sea of stars, augmenting the divine tribulation. As a result, the boundless tribulation clouds gradually stabilized. However, the color of the tribulation clouds gradually turned blood red. Among them, lightning intertwined and electric arcs crisscrossed. All the electric arcs were blood red and extremely strange. Han Fei crossed billions of kilometers in one step and walked towards the place where the strong masters of the eternal race were gathered. Seeing this, those gods fled crazily, trying to escape to the edge of the time-sealing sky. Locke, hoping to stay away from Han Fei as far as possible. There were also countless gods who joined forces to attack the time sky, sealing Locke. However, time was too tight. No one had thought that Han Fei's divine tribulation would seal them in. According to ordinary thinking, one had to protect himself first before transcending the divine tribulation. Even if Han Fei used the time-sealing sky lock, he should have locked the space where he transcended the tribulation to prevent others from stepping in. But who would have expected Han Fei to be so crazy? Someone shouted angrily, he just can't transcend the supreme technique, so he wants to bury us with him. Someone wailed, Master Dominator, save us. Once the tribulation forms, the eternal race will be wiped out. Master Dominator. Countless people shouted, wailed, and panicked. The Dominator trapped by the 10 Yama kings had 2 supreme nature treasures appear around him. An ancient seal was resisting the 10,000 soul banner, and a bead had just been taken out. It seemed to be his trump card. The Dominator roared, and 10 streams of blood appeared on his body, crazily surging into the bead. Among the 10 Yama kings, someone shouted, the Million God blood bead. Patriarch Million God's supreme nature treasure was lost in an ominous battle. I didn't expect it to be in the hands of the eternal race. The Dominator roared, it's good that you know. If you don't retreat, you shall die. Among the 10 Yamas, a Yama walked out. White bones extended out of his back. In the next moment, the 5 white bones all changed into 5 colored bones. Bam! 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 The Yama King seemed to be a tough guy. He actually pulled 5 bones out of his body. At the moment the 5 bones were pulled out, 5 colored divine light emerged from the top of the bones, turning into flags. The Dominator's expression immediately turned ugly. 5 colored primordial chaos banner? You actually nurtured the 5 colored primordial chaos banner in your bones and blood? It hasn't drained your life yet? He he he. How can you measure the heritage of the immortal temple? Then I'd like to see how far you can exert the 5 colored primordial chaos banner with your strength. Million Gods, Tao, blood-killing spell. At that moment, thousands of divine shadows seemed to appear in the 10 directions purgatory. Endless runes spread out and swept across the 10 directions purgatory. At the same time, the 5 colored primordial chaos banner separated into 5 pieces, which appeared respectively in 5 directions, forming a defensive barrier, blocking the endless blood-colored runes. However, with the terrifying power formed by the endless runes, the 5-colored primordial chaos banner began to hum and tremble from the beginning, as if it was still a little difficult. On this side, the 10 Yama kings had managed to exile the Dominator, but on the lone tomb, the Dominator, suppressed by the primordial 8 fierce swords, had completely gone crazy and completely burned the blood of the Dominator. He didn't believe that a person who didn't even want to show up could suppress him with 2 supreme nature treasures. The primordial 8 fierce swords trembled, and a gap was finally broken in the sword array. But the moment the gap was broken, one of the 8 ominous swords swept across the sky, triggering a sky that turned into a boundless fire domain. A voice echoed from the creation divine prison, the 8 ominous, chaotic sea of fire, violent sword, slash. The world was like a sword, and when the sword shot out, 10,000 stars were burning. Such a powerful sword directly cut off one of the Dominator's big hands. If it weren't for the creation mystic yellow tower, this sword might have been able to cut off the entire arm of the Dominator. However, the one in the creation divine prison didn't stop. Instead, he shouted again, the second of the 8 ominous, 9 heavens divine thunder. Sword of justice, kill. Rumble. In the boundless sea of lightning, billions of divine lightning bolts didn't attack the Dominator immediately. Instead, they gathered at a point and intertwined into a lightning sword that crossed that realm. As soon as this sword appeared, the Dominator's expression changed drastically. The primordial 8 ominous broadsword had been held by the heavenly soul for so many years, but had never unleashed such power. Why did it change in the hands of others? He roared, "Who are you?" However, no one responded to him. When the lightning sword slashed down, the Dominator roared and his chest cracked. A golden light rushed out, turning into a huge palm. His 2 fingers formed a sword, trying to resist the lightning sword. Ka ka ka. However, as soon as the 2 sides collided, the golden hand was full of cracks and shattered inch by inch in the next moment. It couldn't resist this sword at all. When the golden hand completely shattered, it was still the rays of light spewed out of the creation mystic yellow tower that shattered the lightning sword. However, before the eternal race Dominator had any time to react, the voice from the creation divine prison shouted again, the third of the 8 ominous is the sky measuring tide, the sword of water, kill. At this moment, the Dominator of the eternal race wondered why he had to fight his way out of the tomb. Was he looking for a beating? After this sword, it was as if billions of tides were pushing into the void. Wherever it pointed, the void was like a tide, and a wave rose, resembling a sword shape. It instantly slapped around the Dominator, attacking his defense and the divine light of the creation mystic yellow tower. Bang! 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 One tide after another, endless and endless. Ka ka ka. Under the terrifying power, the creation mystic yellow tower was overshadowed. At that moment, a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared. In the tide, a plain sword instantly slashed out, while the eternal race Dominator resisted with all his strength. Crack bam. The chest of the eternal race's Dominator was pierced through by this sword. In the next moment, with a crack, the wave hit the body of the creation mystic yellow tower. As the wave swept over, the creation mystic yellow tower was shaken out of the Dominator's side. How is that possible? The eternal race Dominator was shocked. Who are you? How can you cut off my connection with the creation mystic yellow tower? Unfortunately, no one responded to him. However, the creation mystic yellow tower was slapped to the front of the creation divine prison by the void wave. Its originally dim surface seemed to suddenly shine after approaching the creation divine prison. Ka ka ka. The body of the creation mystic yellow tower suddenly began to spin. There were a total of 13 floors, and every floor seemed to be independent. When the creation mystic yellow tower stopped spinning, a monstrous power erupted from the tower. Go! Accompanied by a soft roar from the creation divine prison, the creation mystic yellow tower broke through the air, turned into an extremely tall divine tower, and flew directly to the 10 directions purgatory. The 10 Yama kings were still struggling to hold on, but they had also seen the battle in the creation divine prison. Although they didn't know what kind of guy was hidden in the creation divine prison, that person was indeed extremely powerful, and he must be in the Dominator realm. Therefore, they didn't stop the creation mystic yellow tower from coming. Swish! 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 On the octagonal eaves of the creation mystic yellow tower, a total of 104 chains extended out and instantly pierced into the void. As the golden light on the tower formed a pillar of light and smashed down, with a bang, the Dominator who was trying to break the 5-colored primordial chaos banner and the million-god blood bead that was erupting with terrifying power were enveloped by the sudden golden pillar of light. A large number of blood-colored runes quickly collapsed, and the Dominator-level powerhouse was directly trapped to death by the creation mystic yellow tower, the 5-colored primordial chaos banner, and the 10 directions purgatory. At this moment, Han Fei's divine tribulation still hadn't come. This divine tribulation seemed to come very slowly and was still brewing. However, Han Fei didn't waste any more effort to kill the people of the eternal race, but looked at the creation divine prison calmly. The guy inside was indeed very powerful. The primordial 8 fierce swords and the creation mystic yellow tower seemed to have become different weapons in his hands. He didn't even show up. With just 3 slashes, he utterly defeated that Dominator. Unfortunately, if this guy inside could come out earlier, he might be able to change the layout of the first battlefield. However, at this moment, he had no chance to choose. Since he had chosen to transcend the divine tribulation, no matter how strong the person in the creation mystic yellow tower was, it had nothing to do with him. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 100 seconds. During this period, another 3 sea-quelling gods of the eternal race were killed on the battlefield on senior brother Azure Dragon's side, but 5 or 6 of the ancient creatures had already disappeared. After all, they had no intelligence and could only rely on their instincts, preventing them from fully exerting their combat power. Their combat methods were not as agile and varied as living people. At this moment, above the sea of stars, a blood-colored vortex appeared in the sky, in which blood-colored divine lightning was intertwined. Here it comes. At that moment, everyone who was fighting couldn't help but look at the divine tribulation vortex in the sky. Boom! A blood-red pillar of light shot straight down at Han Fei, instantly enveloping Han Fei. Around the blood-colored pillar of light, small blood-colored lightning was spreading in the divine tribulation domain. No one knew how Han Fei was doing, but the accompanying blood-colored lightning arcs flashing in the divine tribulation domain alone had already shown their power. Some gods reacted extremely quickly and dodged the blood-colored lightning arcs one after another, but the blood-colored lightning arcs appeared without A trace. Many gods were accidentally touched. A god just touched the blood-colored lightning arc and exploded into pieces. His flesh and blood had long disappeared, and his bones shattered all over the sky. This was Han Fei's first lightning tribulation. The power that escaped could kill gods, which had already exceeded everyone's understanding. Pa. 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 Although the gods scattered everywhere, the first lightning bolt was clearly not aimed at them. Even so, when this divine tribulation was first formed, more than 1,000 gods were directly blown to pieces. As for the ordinary people of the eternal race, those below the level of gods couldn't escape at all. They didn't even have the speed to dodge this dissipating blood-colored lightning arc. Therefore, once a blood-colored lightning arc appeared in an ordinary crowd, there was no need to run. Among the 60 billion people of the eternal race, the crackling sounds never stopped. Han Fei, who was in the divine tribulation, laughed ferociously. In the blood-colored lightning pillar, Han Fei was like a steamed crab. Blood-colored patterns appeared on the surface of his body, each of which represented a power shaking his body. Wherever the patterns spread, the skin was broken and cracks appeared. But in such a terrifying power, Han Fei was actually swallowing lightning. Although the first divine tribulation was no longer as simple as lightning, Han Fei was never a simple great monarch. He could withstand this power. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. After a full 13 seconds, the first pillar of lightning disappeared. Only then did everyone see that Han Fei's body seemed to be full of centipede patterns. Obviously, Han Fei had paid a heavy price to resist the first divine tribulation. After the divine tribulation, the power didn't dissipate. On the eternal race's side, there were suddenly more than 3,000 gods missing. As for the number of ordinary people, Han Fei had no time to calculate it. But if someone could accurately calculate it, they would be shocked to find that nearly 3 billion ordinary people had died in this first lightning bolt. At that moment, countless strong masters on the eternal race's side panicked and despaired. They frantically tried to break through the time-sealing sky lock. Someone was horrified. It's over. This is completely over. This is only the first heavenly tribulation. The next 8 will only be stronger than this. 1. No one wanted to die, but they couldn't escape in the end. The despair of waiting for death appeared in everyone's hearts. After about 8 seconds, the second lightning bolt came. It was also a pillar of blood-colored lightning and a dispersing lightning arc, but this time, it was several times more powerful than the first time. And Han Fei didn't use the river of life or spiritual fruits, refined stars, and other things. However, on the eternal race's side, the number of gods who died this time was a little less, only more than 2,000, but the number of ordinary people who died increased, reaching an astonishing 4.2 billion. The reason why fewer gods died, but more ordinary Eternals died, was mainly because the second divine tribulation itself didn't change much, but its power was stronger. However, everyone knew that the first few tribulations of anyone's tribulation were the weakest. The tribulations usually began to become stronger after the fourth one. Of course, Han Fei's first 2 divine tribulations couldn't be said to be weak at all. Some people's 9th divine tribulation might not even be comparable to his first divine tribulation. But in the great monarch realm, how many people could compare to Han Fei? An ordinary peak-level great monarch only had 50,000 combat power. Those who took the extreme Tao only had 100,000 combat power. Few people who surpassed. The extreme Dao had 200,000 combat power. But what about Han Fei? He had forcibly pushed his combat power to 1.2 million. Even in the divine realm, this combat power could be considered intermediate or advanced, let alone the great monarch level. Besides, don't forget that Han Fei didn't have to use his original great Dao to reach the level of sea-quelling god. He had always had the source power that only sea-quelling gods had, so in essence, Han Fei was actually a sea-quelling god. It was precisely because of this that although the first two divine tribulations were powerful, he could still withstand them. However, when it came to the third divine tribulation, the blood-colored lightning was no longer in the shape of a pillar, but turned into a blood-colored chain, trying to buckle Han Fei's body. However, Han Fei didn't want to be outdone. He reached out and grabbed the blood-colored chain. Rumble. Billions of blood-colored lightning arcs gathered on the chains and surged into Han Fei's body crazily, as if they wanted to explode Han Fei. However, the black hole intertwined with his spiritual heritage in Han Fei's body forcibly bore the power of the endless tribulation lightning. As for Han Fei, the flesh and blood on one of his arms had turned into nothingness, leaving only the arm bone wrapped in blood-colored lightning marks. And this tribulation surprisingly didn't dissipate the lightning arcs, making the gods who were curled up at the edge of the time-sealing skylock heave a sigh of relief. Their desire to survive made them try their best to persist and wait for the Dominator to save them. As for the ordinary Eternals, it was as if they had fallen into a living hell. Their prayers and soul cries never stopped. Han Fei had no time to care about them now. After they entered the divine tribulation, their death was only a matter of time. He frowned at this moment. This third divine tribulation was actually very powerful. It took a full 3 seconds for the river of life to completely heal his injuries. Han Fei could feel that since the end of the third divine tribulation, his physique and soul had actually undergone some changes. As for the fourth divine tribulation, there was also no blood-colored lightning dissipating. This made the eternal race creatures feel relieved. Again. Because of this tribulation, a blood-colored thunder ball came down, but this blood-colored thunder ball was only the size of a normal fist. Han Fei's eyes were cold. He opened his mouth and swallowed the blood-colored thunder ball. The moment it entered his stomach, the thunder ball was swallowed by the black hole. But after only 1 second, everyone seemed to hear a muffled bang. Han Fei's body trembled violently, and in an instant, Han Fei's flesh and blood completely melted, leaving only a skeleton covered in blood-colored lightning. And 2 illusory divine bloodlines that didn't seem to exist, flowing with dark red power of lightning. After about 3 seconds, a large amount of blood mist spewed out of the intersection of Han Fei's bones and dual spiritual heritages. After the 8th second, cracking sounds came from Han Fei's bones. Some cracks appeared on his bones, almost every bone. Fair. Jiang Linxian's expression changed drastically. They knew how strong Han Fei's current physique was. He had cultivated the supreme technique to the extreme. His current bones were completely comparable to the sea-quelling god. But even so, his bones still cracked. How could they not be worried? More importantly, this was only the fourth divine tribulation. Jiang Bai frowned, thinking about something. The Dominator who was trapped by the 10 Yama kings shouted, "This guy is courting death. With his ability, it's impossible for him to survive such a divine tribulation." However, at that moment, behind Han Fei, the wheel of life began to spin, the river of life appeared, and the disappeared flesh and blood returned from the dust that filled the sky. But this time it took Han Fei 6 seconds to recover. At this moment, infinite power kept surging in from the crack of the creation star compass, constantly strengthening the power of the divine tribulation. Han Fei took a deep breath and stood still. After about 5 seconds, the fifth divine tribulation appeared. But this time, what appeared first was not a divine tribulation, but a divine persona. What? A divine persona appeared in the fifth divine tribulation? Even senior brother Azure Dragon was stunned. In his tribulation, the divine persona didn't appear until the eighth divine tribulation, but little junior brothers had appeared with 3 divine tribulations in advance. How powerful was this divine tribulation? Senior brother Azure Dragon roared, the divine persona comes first, and then the tribulation. The 5th and 6th divine tribulations, combined. Little junior brother, you can't take it. Of course, Han Fei knew that he couldn't take it. He pointed at the sky with 2 fingers, and his sword intent was arrogant and approached the sky. Just as senior brother Azure Dragon said, the 5th and 6th heavenly tribulations seemed to be one. If he chose to break the divine persona would become the 5th tribulation, and he had to use all his combat power to resist it. At the same time, the 6th divine tribulation was descending. Therefore, this time, he was facing 2 divine tribulations. Han Fei pointed at the sky, and 1,000 spirits of plants and trees appeared under his feet. The power of these 2 tribulations might not be inferior to the 9th divine tribulation. Sword 5, shattering. Sword intent soared to the sky. Han Fei even forcibly activated his original Great Tao, hoping to break it with one blow. Only by breaking the divine persona could he start afresh. Boom. Crack. When Han Fei's sword soared into the sky and broke through the divine persona, he felt that a world seemed to be collapsing, and a torrent of blood-colored lightning instantly enveloped him. At that moment, billions of lightning arcs swept across the world. The gods, who were hiding at the edge of the time-sealing skylock, all dodged, activated spiritual treasures, and used their secrets as if facing a great enemy. This was because the lightning arcs that escaped were too strong, so strong that they couldn't resist them at all. Puff. 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 Han Fei broke the divine persona with all his strength, but a blood tide fell from the sky. He knew that it was the 6th divine tribulation. Thunder technique, heavenly tribulation killing technique. Han Fei's arm sucked the divine tribulation, turned it into a punch, and fought against the sky again. Among the 12 thunder seal technique, there was an ultimate skill called the heavenly tribulation killing technique. Only those who had completely mastered it could use it, or they would suffer a backlash. Han Fei had already mastered the 12 thunder seal technique after all these years of battles and strength. Furthermore, he and Shiman Linglan had retrograded in the river of laws for 180 years. Therefore, resolving one tribulation with another was one of the strongest methods he could use now. Rumble. The terrifying tribulation power collided, and in an instant, boundless rays of light were born. Like an aurora twisting, wherever this light swept, all creatures turned into powder. When the colorful light gradually dissipated, a skeleton without an arm stood proudly in the air. The medicinal power spent by the thousands of spirits of plants and trees turned into billowing energy and entered his body. The wheel of life and the river of life appeared again and continued to rebuild Han Fei's body. However, his body could be rebuilt, but his broken right arm couldn't be restored in a short period of time. In this divine tribulation, Han Fei knew that it was impossible for him to restore the bones of his right arm. At this moment, there were only more than 18,000 eternal race gods left in the divine tribulation. 30,000 gods had already died in the divine tribulation aurora. As for the 50 billion ordinary eternal race members, none of them survived. As for the gods who survived, it was completely because of luck, because the twist of the divine tribulation aurora was irregular. They happened to hide in the weakest part of the aurora somewhere, narrowly saving their lives. But at this moment, the remaining people were all desperate. The eternal race had almost been wiped out. There was no telling if it was because of the gathering of luck, but at that moment, although he was about to face the seventh divine tribulation, Han Fei felt much more relaxed. When Han Fei's body was about to recover, the seventh divine tribulation came. However, Han Fei chuckled because he saw 3F** King Thunderballs. Han Fei's mentality hadn't collapsed yet, but all the onlookers didn't look good at this moment. They all looked extremely solemn. Many people fell silent. Han Fei's recovery time was increasing, from 3 seconds to 12 seconds. Before, Han Fei couldn't even handle one thunderball, but now 3 of them appeared at once. To be honest, no one present had this experience, so they didn't know what to do at all. Only old Han was shouting with all his might, "Use the power of faith, the power of faith." Faced with the 3 blood-colored divine lightning, Han Fei knew that nothing could be of use for him now. It was already not bad that the power of faith he had accumulated could block 1, but there were 3 here, so it was meaningless to use the power of faith here. He knew that what would come in the end. It was convenient for him to destroy the eternal race with the help of the divine tribulation, but he still had to pay a price. Han Fei opened his hands and stopped resisting. Behind him, the river of life appeared, and the tributaries of the river of life were attracted into Han Fei's body. What is he going to do? No one could understand Han Fei's operation, because no one knew the supreme technique. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 blood-colored divine lightning were all swallowed by Han Fei, but this time, the black hole only absorbed 1 blood-colored divine lightning. As for the other 2, they exploded in Han Fei's body. Rumble. The ripples of the explosion dissipated within the range of the divine tribulation and instantly covered this place. The remaining 18,000 gods failed to receive the help of their dominators in the end. Being swept by this ripple, even if they resisted it together, they still couldn't withstand it. Bang! 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 When the eternal race's last god exploded, 50,000 gods had all died just because of a divine tribulation. There was almost no suspense about the destruction of the eternal race. Even if those god-slayers, sea-quelling gods, or even dominators had a chance to escape by a fluke, it seemed unlikely that they could revive the eternal race. At this moment, the heavenly Tao death knell kept ringing densely. All kinds of great Tao cracks were dense and continuous. In the divine tribulation domain, not only did the eternal race disappear, but even Han Fei disappeared. Yes, there was not even a skeleton left. The power of the 3 blood-colored divine lightning was no longer something Han Fei's Tao bones could resist. Fair. Jiang Linxian was distracted and her attack was broken by a divine cone. A Mouthful of essence, blood gushed out. Xianer. Just as Jiang Bai was about to take the opportunity to break free from the array, he saw the stars move quickly in the infinite star array, and the power of the star river violently crushed over. Jiang Bai snorted coldly, and his fist light shot into the starry river. After a round of confrontation, he failed to make a breakthrough, but Han Guangqu's face was also a little pale. With Jiang Linxian's quick reaction, the two of them trapped Jiang Bai again. Jiang Bai seemed to be somewhat angry and shouted, Han Guangqu, Jiang Linxian. It's impossible for anyone to survive Han Fei's tribulation. He died. In the end. Don't worry. When the infinite star array collapses, I will send you two to see him. On the battlefield at the level of sea quelling god, the old dragon god heaved a long sigh. What a pity. If it weren't for these troublesome guys from the eternal race, with little friend Han Fei's talent, he might have been able to. The three sea quelling gods of the Time Temple also sighed in their hearts. That kind of divine tribulation was indeed not something humans could transcend. It was already a miracle that Han Fei could survive the seventh divine tribulation. At this moment, the demon god also sighed slightly. From now on, would he be the only one with dual spiritual heritages? Little junior brother is not dead. Suddenly, senior brother Azure Dragon said firmly, I can still feel the void mark on little junior brother. Buzz. Sure enough, in the next moment, the power of the divine tribulation didn't dissipate, and the tribulation clouds were still condensing. On the field, the river of life appeared inexplicably, and countless fine streams were drawn out by the river of life, condensing into the shape of a human bone and then gathering into billions of meridians. As for the spiritual heritage, it vaguely appeared at this moment, and the intertwined black hole was still there. In the next moment, everyone saw that Han Fei's flesh and blood were quickly returning. Senior brother Azure Dragon's eyes lit up. Little junior brother is so bold. He knew that his body couldn't resist the seventh divine tribulation, so he simply didn't resist it and replaced his bones with the river of life. He wants to forcibly transcend the divine tribulation with his indestructible body. Is it even possible? Those who saw this were shocked. If he didn't die in such a situation, they couldn't help but suspect that they were just fake great monarchs. Jiang Bai was also a little stunned, but then he put on an imperceptible smile. Han Guangqu was overjoyed and shouted, Xianer, believe in your son. Don't forget, he is the strongest heavenly talent in the world. Seeing this, Jiang Linxian was slightly relieved. However, this was only the seventh heavenly tribulation. What about the rest? Under the divine tribulation, Han Fei came back to life. Under his feet, he stepped on the river of life, and the wheel of life hung behind him. In his body, a massive amount of source power spewed out of the black hole and seeped into the bones condensed by the river of life. From the beginning, Han Fei had guessed that such a scene might happen. Song Tian gained the supreme heart first, while he gained the supreme bone first. It wasn't that the bone of life was the supreme bone, but that this bone represented the strongest vitality. No Dao bone in this world could have such vitality. At this moment, Han Fei felt that his soul body was mutating and crazily turning into a divine source. In fact, from the moment the fifth divine tribulation shattered the divine persona, this anomaly had already begun. Senior brother Azure Dragon's anomaly began to be obvious after the sixth divine tribulation. There was no telling if it was because of the supreme divine technique, but he didn't really transition to the God realm until the end of the seventh divine tribulation. And once this transition began, it meant that he was no longer a great monarch, but a god. Whether it was strength or soul, he was becoming stronger. However, Han Fei didn't dare to be negligent. In fact, with his strength, he couldn't withstand the seventh divine tribulation. He didn't know what the eighth divine tribulation would be. However, after 3 seconds, when Han Fei saw the blood-colored divine lightning that filled the sky, he finally understood. 100,000 lightning techniques? Han Fei couldn't help but grin. This was Senior Brother Azure Dragon's ninth divine tribulation. It seemed to be a necessary part of the divine tribulation. 100,000 lightning techniques corresponded to the 100,000 laws one had mastered, which tested his control of laws after law fusion. It was quite difficult for ordinary people to control 100,000 laws. It was like asking a person to master 100,000 combat skills. This was a very time-consuming thing. However, for Han Fei, this divine tribulation might be the simplest one in this divine tribulation except for the first and second. Boom boom boom. Sure enough, in the next moment, blood-colored lightning struck down one after another. Although there were many of them, every one of them was like normal lightning, but blood-colored. Bathed in the blood-colored lightning, Han Fei's body became extremely resistant. The bone of life he created later was not afraid of this divine tribulation at all. 10,000. 20,000. 30,000. Under the continuous bombardment of the dense blood-colored heavenly tribulation, Han Fei's body exploded and was instantly repaired in the next moment. This was the power of the bone of life. For others, the purple heavenly tribulation was already extraordinary. The black heavenly tribulation might probably be unique, and ordinary people had never seen a blood-colored heavenly tribulation. It seemed that Han Fei's tribulation was simple, but no one would believe that. This kind of lightning was really simple. If the 50,000 gods of the eternal race hadn't been wiped out after the seventh divine tribulation, it was still impossible for them to survive in this tribulation. Any random divine tribulation wasn't something they could resist. 80,000, 90,000, 100,000. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone present was no stranger to this tribulation, but what shocked them was that Han Fei had withstood a full 100,000 lightning techniques. This meant that Han Fei had stacked exactly 100,000 kinds of laws, not one more, not one less. In a sense, this could be regarded as a kind of talent, and it turned out that Han Fei's talent was indeed unparalleled. After this tribulation, Han Fei felt that his strength had soared. His basic strength had more than tripled and was still strengthening. And he hadn't passed the divine tribulation yet. There were 9 divine tribulations. After the 9 tribulations was the God slaying tribulation, the heart-refining tribulation. From the moment Han Fei's 5th divine tribulation shattered his divine persona, he had actually been in the transition between a god and a god-slayer. At this moment, the 9th divine tribulation was gradually brewing. From the tribulation clouds, a power he was familiar with appeared, which was the power of destruction. Han Fei understood. Destruction and rebirth were a life and death battle. Buzz. Behind Han Fei, the wheel of life began to accelerate, but in the blink of an eye, it turned into rapid operation. In the tribulation clouds, a river flowed out. It was actually a black river. Every drop of river water seemed to symbolize destruction. At that moment, the eternal darkness spiritual heritage in Han Fei's body bloomed with light. Behind and under Han Fei's feet, the river of life began to surge out. With Han Fei as the center, the two rivers began to collide, fuse, digest, and compete with each other. Han Fei was in the middle of the two powers, sometimes melting, sometimes being reborn, and changing between life and death. Seeing this, the old dragon god and the others all swallowed. The old dragon god couldn't help but sigh. Ordinary people would have died 800 times over. A sea-quelling god of the time temple couldn't help but sigh. Ordinary people might not be able to withstand the first divine tribulation. On the 10 Yamas king's side, a Yama king said gloomily, "It turns out that there is really a river of destruction in this world. It seems that there are still many secrets in the sea of stars that have been fully explored." Another Yama nodded. Human emperor has mastered the law of life and the profound meaning of death. It seems that he can safely pass the ninth tribulation. In the field, this stalemate only lasted for about 12 seconds, but Han Fei was killed 100 times. Finally, when the ninth divine tribulation dissipated, Han Fei felt that he needed too much energy, too much soul power. As Han Fei issued an order in his heart, the soul-purifying pearls left behind by the eternal race all flew towards him. In the next moment, more than 3,000 spirits of plants and trees and thousands of refined stars surrounded him, crazily providing him with energy. Han Fei had always remembered senior brother Azure Dragon's words. "Fight the heavens, people, and myself." The 10th tribulation is also the second shackle. What you fight is yourself, who should have had a divine persona. However, his 10th divine tribulation was clearly not fighting him himself. Because above his head, the heavenly Tao collapsed and dispersed all laws. Others couldn't feel it, but Han Fei could clearly feel that at that moment. He couldn't mobilize the power of the heavenly Tao, nor could he drive all laws out of his body. Even the river of life behind him was faintly collapsing, and the infinite power of life seemed to be leaving him. At that moment, Han Fei's greatest reliance seemed to be leaving him. As for the brilliant tribulation clouds, they turned into a tornado that swept across the world, sucking Han Fei in, as if they were about to collapse. Everything he relied on. Heart-refining tribulation? No, it should still be the God-slaying tribulation. Is this the reason why Tsangtian wants his heart to reach the supreme level? First, the power of the supreme level suppresses everything. Once you reach this realm, the heavens and earth can no longer suppress the person who has such a heart. Therefore, they don't allow it. At that moment, Han Fei seemed to suddenly understand something. He couldn't help but look at the Dominator who was trapped by the 10 Yama kings, and then at the Dominator who was suffocating under the pressure of the creation divine prison. Why are these Dominators so weak? Although he hadn't stepped into the Dominator level, he felt that it didn't make sense that a few supreme nature treasures combined with the power of the heavens and earth and some array methods could easily suppress them. He suddenly remembered that the first supreme swept across the sea of stars and was invincible. Tsangtian had cleared the supreme path. Even if he wasn't the strongest in the sea of stars, among the powers that resisted the ominous in the past, Tsangtian was the strongest. Was it because the other supremes weren't strong? No, it was just that their understanding of supremes was different. Other supremes shouldn't be called supremes, but dominators. It seemed that the two were in the same realm, but Han Fei felt that they actually were not. A supreme was definitely a dominator, and a dominator might not necessarily be a supreme. In the eyes of the first supreme and the heavenly race, a supreme should be unique and suppress the heavens. Their mental state and comprehension were different from others. As for the other so-called supremes, they mostly advanced step by step, or struggled to advance from the seek-quelling God realm. In their eyes, the dominator realm was just a realm. But the profound meaning of the supreme divine technique was different. In Han Fei's eyes, the supreme technique was no longer a realm, but a kind of will. The supreme technique required the cultivators to jump from the great monarch realm directly to the peak. The process was so difficult that in the eyes of most people, it was simply a dead end. Think about it, how could a great monarch cross 3 realms? Others didn't dare, but people like the first supreme and Santian, who dared to do this and succeeded, had already surpassed others in terms of mentality, will, and even understanding of the heavenly Tao and supreme. Therefore, Han Fei suddenly understood. It turned out that his goal was not to break through to the dominator realm at all. The dominator realm was just a process of becoming a supreme. And a supreme was a unique will. The will had nothing to do with how far one could break through. The path of a supreme had always been the strongest path. It was a kind of determination to compete with the heavens. After realizing this, Han Fei suddenly smiled. Behind him, the river of life that was on the verge of dissipating became clear again. In the power of the collapse of the world, he felt the power of all laws, and the Tao of the heavens again. Yes, at this moment, Han Fei finally understood the meaning of a supreme. At that moment, Han Fei's body was shining with golden light. The divine tribulation domain seemed to be augmenting his body with invisible luck, and infinite energy surged into his body. In the past, Santian pointed at the sky and claimed to be the strongest. Now, Han Fei was in the storm of tribulation clouds, feeling the power of the collapse of the heavens, and the smile on Han Fei's face spread. He shouted, "My name is Han Fei. I want to become a supreme. The heavens and earth can't snatch my will, expel my laws, or break my Tao. In the world, no one can judge me, punish me, or suppress me. The heavens and earth can't either. My Tao obeys no rule." With a wave of Han Fei's hand, a towering will soared to the sky, and the surging tribulation clouds began to tremble as if they could dissipate at any time. As for Han Fei, he opened his mouth and sucked the tribulation cloud storm into his stomach. At that moment, unparalleled power suddenly erupted from Han Fei's body. At this strength level, the God-slaying tribulation was broken. Senior brother Azure Dragon thought that there was still one last tribulation before little junior brother could become a seek-quelling god. But Han Fei knew that he might have another tribulation, but that tribulation was definitely not the heart-refining tribulation of the seek-quelling god. Because when he was comprehending the supreme heart, he no longer needed to transcend the heart-refining tribulation. What he needed to break was the shackles stopping him from stepping into the supreme realm. At this moment, Han Fei's strength was soaring at an unbelievable speed. His realm seemed to have been completely opened. Billions of law, Tao patterns were sucked into his body, and his flesh and blood were instantly shaken apart. His Tao bones that had been shattered quickly returned to their original positions and condensed again. At the same time, the river of life, the power of faith, the law Tao patterns, the supreme will, and the trace of luck that couldn't be touched but could be felt, were also fused into Han Fei's new bones. Han Fei's bones gradually became real, and his flesh and blood condensed again. At this moment, Han Fei felt that his body was like a dry field that had been dry for a long time, absorbing all the energy he could absorb. The thousands of spirits of plants and trees, tens of millions of refined stars, and the soul-purifying pearls were instantly shattered like spiritual fruits, turned into pure energy, and were quickly swallowed by Han Fei. Not enough. Too slow. Buzz. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the blood-colored tribulation clouds that filled the sky, his eyes revealing greed. Where did the tribulation come from? It seemed to be a law manifested by the will of the world. And Han Fei wanted to swallow this will of the world at this moment. The blood-colored tribulation cloud seemed to be angry too. It seemed to feel Han Fei's threat, because Han Fei not only wanted energy, but also wanted to crush its will. However, the world carried all things and nurtured all living beings. How could it be suppressed by the will of others? Immediately, the boundless blood-colored tribulation clouds quickly compressed and collapsed. In just 3 seconds, they shrank to tens of millions of kilometers in size. Another second later, they were only 100 meters long. 5 seconds later, they were only the size of a fingernail.